Oh, yeah.
40-13, the final score in Athens. I'm very interested to hear our discussion about Gamecock football today after Shane Beamer suffers his first loss in his SEC debut as a head coach. And so many things happen in that game on Saturday night. Welcome into your Monday morning, or thanks for making us part of your Monday morning routine, I should say. Tim Hill and Patrick Perrette with you here. Patrick scrambling for some headphones. Should have started the live stream a little bit earlier as the intro music starts to raise. Where are my headphones? And now he's good to go.
I got him.
Nothing to. He's a multitasker over there.
They've never left the studio before. Never had to look for him right at the last second.
So not the strongest start to your week, but I think a lot of Gamecock fans are right there with you. Not what you wanted to see over in Athens in a lot of ways, but I think this morning might tell me more about you as a person or your fandom than it does what I saw on Saturday night, because I think you can go multiple ways, right? You can harp on how Georgia had the game in hand most of the time and how that program has ascended to the top of college football since Kirby Smart took over. You can go back and say, man, South Carolina almost had Kirby Smart, and that should be the Gamecocks and not Georgia and the whole thing. You can go the complete opposite way. Shane Beamer's squad showed heart and fight and plenty of examples of reasons to be encouraged about the future for Carolina. Luke Doty came in. I thought he looked pretty good in a adverse situation, I think, to put it mildly. And 40-13, that's what, 10 more points than Clemson scored against Georgia this year. You could go that way. You could be somewhere in the middle and say, about what Vegas expected, a little bit better than that, but never really seriously in contention for that ball game. Shane Beamer afterwards just asked about how the run game never got going, and that put him in a bad spot real quick. We'll play you that response in a little bit, but that's an example of just the gap between the two teams. Patrick, how do you start this morning? Your thoughts about 40-13 win for Georgia over Carolina over the weekend?
Yeah, about what we expected. I mean, it's weird to say. I think the offense probably played a little bit better than I expected. I didn't really expect hardly any deep shots to work out in South Carolina's favor, but I mean, really, if there's one takeaway, it's who is this Josh Vann and where has he been the past couple of years? I mean, he was awesome. Seemed like every contested ball thrown his way, he came down with, and there was even maybe it was Luke Doty's first pass was a shot to Josh Vann that ended up getting called back for holding, so it could have actually been an even better stat line for him. But 3 catches, 128 yards is a pretty ridiculous average right there, and yeah, I mean, Georgia's defense is just incredible. Anybody that didn't know that going into the game knows it now. It's NFL player after NFL player. The guys that were hyped on Georgia lived up to the billing. Jordan Davis, Shane Beamer was very clear. He's a 340-pounder who can run. And he was awesome against his former high school teammate, Eric Douglas. I didn't know that fact, but they told us many times. And Nakobe Dean was everywhere you looked. Anytime a ball went to the sideline, Nakobe Dean was out there making a tackle. He was awesome. And Georgia's just really good, and that's just the way it is. I wish our defense had held up a little bit better at the beginning because Georgia was just slicing through them like it was nothing, and this isn't even a full-strength Georgia team. So I feel good about them as a national championship pick because they certainly look the part. And when they have Darnell Washington back and when they have some of their defenders back, Tyke Smith, maybe some of those deep shots won't happen. They're just a really good football team, and that's really all you can take away. I'm always glad after games like this that there's NFL Sundays because there's no better way to put that game out of your mind than just watching NFL for a whole day and ending on a ridiculous game too. It makes me feel better immediately.
Last night, if you didn't stay up for Chiefs and Ravens, it was a tremendous finish. And John Harbaugh showed just how simple football can be. A minute to go. Chiefs out of timeouts. Ravens 4th and 1, about their own 40-ish yard line, I believe, in there. He just takes off his headset, basically. Says, hey, Lamar, you want to go? You want to go, Lamar? Let's go. They got the 1 yard they wanted to do. Lamar Jackson was really good at home. The Chiefs, it was back and forth, and that was a wildly entertaining game for sure. The Carolina Panthers moved to 2-0. J.C. Horn gets his first interception in the NFL. Sam Darnold looks good. The New Orleans Saints were without 8 coaches because of the virus list and the whole thing. That was fascinating, I thought, too, Patrick.
Yeah,
but
it was crazy at the beginning when they talked about what the deal was. So they had 8 coaches missing. So Sean Payton's administrative assistant was coaching on Sunday. And then Ian Book, their backup or third-string quarterback, depending on how you look at the Jameis Taysom Hill thing, was running the substitutions for the team.
Wow.
As a rookie. It was just wild how they had to put that thing together.
Well, I could identify. I had 4 players out on my flag football team yesterday. So I totally get it. We had to play 7-man iron football both ways. So they're very similar.
That's tough.
Back to
play both ways?
Yeah, it didn't go well. Back to Georgia and Carolina. 40-13, 27 points. The spread opened up at 32.5 and I think dropped down to 30. So Carolina covers in this thing, but what was it, 9 yards? I think it was 8 yards rushing in the first half. And the way that first half ended was really kind of, to me, the microcosm of the game, right? Carolina has a chance to force Georgia to punt. They do that by calling a timeout with, 30 seconds to go, somewhere like that, less than a minute to go. You block a punt, you make them punt, you make them have a chance to make a mistake. Maybe you get back in the ball game, or you make a little noise towards the end of the first half, and you cut the score at that point was 21-6, right? You take a field goal, you make it 21-9, somehow luck up and get a touchdown, and then you're really in business. But that was the thinking, being aggressive there. St. Beamer says that's what his program is going to be. That's what his style is. Unfortunately for Carolina, it completely backfired by Georgia playing perfect punt coverage, downing the ball at the 1-yard line. Beamer says he told Marcus Satterfield to take a shot out of the end zone. Luke Doty goes back to pass, and it's a safety. That's 2 points. Then the Gamecocks kick off. Georgia gets a couple of chunk plays, sets themselves up for a field goal, kicks the field goal. So Beamer admitted he cost his team 5 points by making that call, making that timeout, or making the call to throw the ball out of the end zone as well. To me, that was the end right there. If you had any hopes of a comeback, you had to end the half really good. You had to start the next half really good. Georgia puts up 14 unanswered in the third quarter as well and ices the game away. But that was an example of Georgia's dominance in this thing. And unfortunately for the Gamecocks, it ends up in a 40-13 loss. In the big picture, 2-1 headed into Kentucky this Saturday night was about as sunny and rosy, I think, as you could have predicted the 2021 season to go, unless maybe you're an 87-year-old superfan named Gamecock Larry, who we certainly need to hear from out on the Love Chevrolet phone lines now at 803-404-6100 is the number. Larry, what did you think of what you saw from the Gamecocks this weekend?
Whole lot better than 40-13. And the Tigers 14, Georgia Tech 8, and that was a messed up game. But Florida looked good. I'm not going to say too much about the Gamecocks because I'm going to wait for all them Bulldog fans to call me. I know them Clemson fans don't want to call me because I'll tell you what, I think Georgia going to be number 1 when this comes out. Georgia 1, Alabama 2, Oklahoma 3, Oklahoma 3, Texas, Florida 4, Texas A&M 5. And so we're going to have 4 teams in the top 5. And Clemson, I think they're going to drop down. But I'm going to take the day off and let them listen. I won't answer my phone. They're going to be calling from Georgia. I know that. They're going to be hollering. I don't care. But I can take it. Some of these Clemson fans, I can't get them to answer the phone. So, that's the difference in being a Gamecock through and through and a Dabo. I ain't going to talk about Dabo. I'm going to talk about, what was I going to say, Tim? What was I going to say? I done got this written down, but I'm going to tell you, the Kentucky quarterback, he doesn't come out and say it's going to be different in Columbia. It sure is. It's going to be different when you come down here. We're going to take you to the woodshed. We're waiting on you. But that's about all I got to say. We're going to be okay. But like I say, we give them 19 points. And Georgia, man, I tell you what, they got some big old boys. They got some big old guys, 5 stars and all. But Alabama didn't look good at all in the last 3 quarters. But what it is, after this next season, old Saban going to be packing up to retire. And Clemson keeps going like they going. Old Dabo going to be packing up to move to Alabama after next season. But that's about it. I just want to fire them all up. I know I done messed everything up. I can't talk straight. Got a good night's rest. I don't know what's wrong with me, but I'm going to have to just sit down, relax, listen, get all these phone calls, write everything down, and I'll call you guys and talk a little bit straighter in the morning. Go Gamecocks.
Gamecock Larry, ladies and gentlemen. Didn't get a lot of rest this week. And get some rest, Larry. I'm glad you're going to take the day off today. It's a good point about the Clemson game and 14-8. Who would have saw that coming? I mean, the Carolina final score was pretty close. And sure, I guess you can say you gave them 19 points to me. Georgia took everything there. Carolina, I thought Patrick played better than we saw in week number 2. Week number 1, a bit of a wash with Eastern Illinois being what it is. I think what we saw on Saturday night is going to be more like what we see the rest of the season. The unfortunate part for the Gamecocks, some injuries in that thing, especially Sherrod Green going down, starting linebacker early on. Looks like he's going to be lost for the season. Shane Beamer saying there's a possibility he's back in November. It's a broken bone in his ankle. So that was brutal to see. And you got to understand kind of even the emotional toll that takes on a team. Everybody coming out while he's hopping on the cart and wishing him well. I'm sure it reminded a lot of us, and reminded me for sure of the terrible Marcus Lattimore being carted off at Williams-Brice in that Tennessee game that ended his career. Fortunately, not that severe, I think, for Sherrod Green, even though I think he went right into surgery. But the possibility is there for him to come back in November. But bad news there. You had Cam Smith, your best defensive back going into the game, not being able to play much in the second half. He got stepped on his foot. I think Shane Beamer said the same injured foot he had in preseason camp. So Beamer optimistic to get Cam Smith back, I think, this week against Kentucky, but we'll see. And then you had the Zeb Nolan situation. First of all, it's a weird call. I understand you're supposed to let these things go on the field, Patrick, right? If there's any kind of ambiguity about an arm going forward and a possible fumble and the whole thing. But, I mean, Zeb Nolan couldn't have thrown it much harder right to the back of it.
No.
His own teammate's helmet. It was clear it was not a fumble. And unfortunately, I don't know. Do you think Nolan? I don't think his hand would have gotten stepped on if they had blown the whistle immediately. Do you think that would have happened? Maybe I'm thinking about it in the slow motion replay in my head, and I'm slowing it down too much, and it still would have happened, and it was just kind of natural momentum of the rush still coming at him. But I thought it might still be just the play continuing on as it did on the field, unfortunately for him, and got his hand stepped on, couldn't feel his hand, and was out really early in that game.
I think I'm with you that he wouldn't have gotten hurt if they just blew it dead. It would have just ended. I mean, that was just annoying. I get the idea that, hey, we can review it, so let's just call it this way, and then we'll go ahead and review it after. I mean, they do that in the NFL now too. If it's between a turnover or a touchdown, always go that way because you got the automatic review. But I mean, it was so obvious. He drilled the guy in the head, drilled him in the head, and that was just another example of college refs just, I don't know what they're doing. There were some terrible spots during the game where the refs just 10 yards behind the player and clearly doesn't know where they're going down because they're not on the line watching the ball. It's just, I don't know. I really don't know what they're doing. And it just makes the games last forever because we have to do a million reviews. If you're just in the right spot, you can clearly tell that he chucked the ball at the guy's helmet, blow it dead immediately, keep it moving. That's why games take 4.5 hours in college football. It's just, I don't know what they can do to fix it. But in this case, it kind of got someone hurt and wasted a lot of time for something that was such a run-of-the-mill play.
Really
Should
felt
have been.
really felt bad for Zeb Nolan. You know, the story was there. ESPN was obviously all invested in the story with the camera on Zeb's parents and dad, particularly there as a high school coach right around the Athens area, and getting back on the field, coming back from being a graduate assistant. That story was very much a part of the thinking of how they were going to frame the game, or the lens in which they're going to tell the story of this game, and then only in for a few plays before having to leave the game with his hand stepped on, and how it happened was just a weird circumstance for sure. Jason said this is one of those weird times when I agree with Patrick. How about that? I'd say Patrick started off in a relatively sunny mood for a Monday morning. Maybe you're still glowing. You're basking in the glow of a Washington football team win in week number 2 of the NFL season.
We're number 1 in the division.
There you go.
First place.
That's got to be what it is. Looking forward to hearing from the other end of the experience spectrum on the Love Chevy phone lines. Looks like Gamecock Lucas will lead us off when we come back from this break. We'll also let you hear a little bit from Shane Beamer and his post-game comments after the 40-13 loss to Georgia. Just getting going on a Monday morning. About to put out a poll question as well about how you feel now about Gamecock football after that Georgia game. Hope your Monday morning's off to a good start. Thanks again for making us a part of your routine. If you're up on the Facebook, YouTube live stream, or checking us out on Twitter as well via the video stream, we appreciate that. That's brought to you by Beaufort Lending. You're listening to The Early Game. It's 107.5 The Game.
Live, local, and free. That's how we do sports. 107.5 The Game. Feel free to call and complain if you wish.
You should call that radio station and let him have it.
Remember, we are free of charge, after all.
The foundation. Foundation is wildly important, and that goes to some of our conversation today. Right now, I don't want to talk football with you. I want to talk about your home. If you've noticed any kind of foundational issues or possibilities, like a crack in your exterior brick, a crack in a wall above a window, door frames, maybe your door sticks a little bit now, or you feel like your floors are bouncing, you got a crack over your garage door, any of those signs, that's a sign of a foundation problem. And you need to get it checked out by the experts. The experts are at Canty, Canty Foundation Specialists. Go to cantycanfixit.com, and they'll come out and tell you exactly what's going on, because you don't want that lingering. You don't want to be guessing. You don't want to be thinking worst case scenario in your head. And I've been there. I have had a house with a foundation issue. It is not a fun place to be. But what I realized in that situation is I made it much worse in my head than it was in reality. And if I would have just gotten Canty out at the very beginning of this process, when I first noticed something, all of that stress or worry would have been put out of the way. They would have taken care of it, and we would have moved on, and everything would have been much better off in reality than I thought it was, than I made it in my head. CantyCanFixit.com. If you have a crawl space, you got any kind of humidity or condensation in that crawl space, you need to get that taken care of right away. It can lead to much bigger problems. That's why you got to get Canty Foundation Specialists out to your house. Again, the website for Canty is CantyCanFixit.com.
Clear. And from the Shepherd's Glass Traffic Center, Shepherd's Glass, true reflection of quality, shepherdsglass.com. Just one.
All right, took me a second to get Gamecock Larry audio going there. You guys able to hear him okay? I guess there's no complaints there.
Oh man, lots of
All right, how should I phrase this? How do you feel about Gamecock football after the 40-13 loss at Georgia?
How many options you putting?
I'll put all four. You have a suggestion of one?
Well, I would think like they played better than I expected, or
Right.
it was uglier than I thought, or nothing has changed really. I don't know what a fourth would be.
Worse. What's that?
I don't know what a fourth option would be.
So encourage, same, or worse, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to put optimistic, fought hard. See what I felt going in. What's the fourth you're putting? I don't know how to feel. How about that?
That's fair. Lucas sounded tired this morning.
Oh, yeah? Uh-oh.
Yeah.
I hope he understands that people like John are looking forward to hearing from him.
I say we're going to need some energy.
A lot of pressure. Why is that the most important? What do you mean by the reception? No, we shook hands with a lot of players, but we talked about that going in. That's what we expected. That was exactly what I expected. What happened? It's a great question, Joe. I'm not sure about that. So Steven says he feels the same. What are you shaking your head at, Patrick?
Just the Muschamp stuff.
Yeah, I feel like
We also got a text that was like, under Muschamp, we lose this game by 60.
oh.
Muschamp beat this team last time we were here. What are you talking about?
We got a bunch of texts, and I'm just now opening the text line. My bad.
Yeah, when they reset the station computers, all my passwords got lost. So I only have the texting on this laptop. I'm only checking it every once in a while, and they're coming in fast and furious. The South Carolina Georgia game is still on ESPN right now.
Interesting.
Actually, what is that channel? I can't even see. I gotta look in the reflection. Looks like the SEC Network.
Marshall.
Well, Muschamp is on the screen. Jackson Muschamp is on the screen.
Confused by text, but that's usual.
All right, we're back. Yeah.
Cool Care Heating and Air text line 803-404-6100 flooded, as you might imagine, with plenty of messages starting at 5:40 this morning. Actually starting at 4:37 this morning. Good morning, all. The text reads. This is actually from Gamecock Larry. So he just goes through the 19 points. They subtract. Somebody hits up with one of the texts that you don't subtract. Gene says Georgia gave us a spanking. Moving on to Kentucky. Counting the days till Zeb gets back. Doty is the future. I'm a little confused by that, Gene. So I'm guessing you're saying Doty isn't the present, but he's the future. Patrick, I thought Luke Doty came in and played pretty well, considering the circumstances, considering how good Georgia's defense is. The numbers were, I mean, nothing spectacular, but nothing to hang your head about. 13 out of 26 passing, 153 yards, a touchdown, and a pick. What'd you think of Luke Doty coming in, especially how he came in, with Zeb Nolan getting his hand stepped on and having to go out of the game pretty quickly?
Yeah, and I mentioned in the first segment that Doty's first pass was a deep ball that he hit that should have been a completion. So it should have actually looked better. I thought he was really good. I mean, not really good. I guess that's a stretch, but he did everything he could. I think it would have been substantially worse if Zeb was back there because there were several plays that Doty scrambled, made something happen, or kept a play alive and made a throw downfield that Zeb just frankly would not have been able to do. I mean, the first play of the game, Zeb was struggling to get those 2 yards. I mean, he had so much green grass in front of him, and he was just moving in slow motion. Nolan Smith is a freak athlete, was the #1 recruit in the country, but he tracked him down in about 2 steps. I mean, Doty would have gotten a first down and more on that play. So there were just plays that he made that Zeb wouldn't have been able to make, and Doty is the future. That's just the way it is. I think he was good. The offensive line, we'll talk about it. They were not good at all. It wasn't one person. It was 5 people. There wasn't a single offensive lineman that played a good game, I don't think. It was just brutal. Georgia was in the backfield every single play.
But is there going to be an offensive line that plays Georgia this year, and you're going to say, hey, that offensive line was really good?
No, but our offensive line didn't play well against East Carolina either. I mean, they packed the box every play, so maybe Kentucky will be a good measuring stick because it'll be more of a straight-up game. Kentucky won't feel the need to load up to stop the run. Perhaps maybe they will. But that was just that we would have had minus 50 sack yards if Zeb was out there because he wouldn't have been able to keep plays alive like Luke did. So I thought he did everything he could. I thought he played well. No brutal turnovers or anything like that. There's the interception, but that was what it was. And I thought he played well. I think he absolutely deserves to play Kentucky and pretty much from here on out.
So when you say the future, you mean the present as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, to me, Luke Doty showed why he's the guy. Because he can throw it. He looked like a very confident passer back there, but also you throw in the athleticism that he has. I don't understand how you wouldn't want him on the field from the Gamecock perspective. Nick weighing in on the Cool Care Heating and Air text line from the Georgia perspective. He says, I got a serious question. All weekend I've heard my Gamecock friends brag of the fact they got a backdoor cover. Is it really okay for Gamecock Nation to be happy with a 27-point loss? Go Dogs. Nick, this is one of those things that just irks me so much, where people try to feel for another group of people, right? Why are you worried about Gamecock fans? If you're a Georgia fan, enjoy it and move on. Do you just want to rub it in? Is that where you're at this point? Maybe that's what it is. The Gamecock fans have been through a lot with the Muschamp era, man. Something that you don't have to identify with at all. That Georgia fans complain now that Kirby Smart hasn't won a national championship, right? That's the big complaint with Georgia. That's the big knock on Kirby Smart's coaching ability. He can't win a national title. Come on. Have a little class in the win. That's all I'm asking for. 803-404-6100. Richard says, can definitely deal with us losing to Georgia, but we got to have the worst offensive line in college football for the life of me. I've never seen this many blown assignments and lack of effort. Beamer did his job in trying to cover for our guys, saying Georgia has so many 4 or 5 stars, but that has nothing to do with it. Line has been pathetic for years, but this is an all-time low. Richard, respectfully, that was not an all-time low on Saturday night. Not even close. Georgia is really, really good. And you got to give the other team some credit. I would say week number 2 was a much worse performance from the offensive line standpoint against East Carolina, who did come back and beat Marshall over the weekend, by the way, after down pretty big, which I thought was a good sign for Carolina moving forward. But to not assert your will against East Carolina, to me, is a much bigger detriment and much bigger bad sign for the South Carolina offensive line than what I saw on Saturday night, especially knowing how many rush yards did Clemson have against Georgia, Patrick? Was it 2?
Yeah, it was 2. And even if you don't count sack yards, I think it was only like 25, 27 or something like that.
South Carolina ends up with, I think, 96 rushing yards. And 8 in the first half is the number I'll go by, right? Because a lot of these were later on in the game and kind of uncompetitive downs. So I don't think there's any reason to harp on those numbers too much. Clearly overmatched. There's no doubt about it. But if you thought otherwise going into the game, that's where I'm really confused. If you thought Carolina was going to be able to hold up, maybe it was that game 2 years ago where Carolina was also a huge underdog going into Athens, 21, 24 points, wherever. It depended on when you bet that line that week. And guys weren't blown off the ball in that game, and that's what you're comparing it to. I guess if you go in that direction, I can somewhat get on board with that line of thinking. 803-404-6100. Wanted to get back out to the Love Chevy phone lines now, where our buddy Gamecock Lucas wants to weigh in this morning
on what he saw from the Gamecocks over the weekend. Lucas, hope you're doing all right, sir.
Yes, sir. We did what we could do. We tried our best, and, we just didn't succeed. I'm pretty happy with our performance. We didn't win, but, it gives us some experience for this next game we're coming up to against Kentucky, and hopefully we could try and put some more better plays in. But as far as 2 interception goes, I'm pretty happy with that. And, we'll just have to see if we can't get better on. Our defense couldn't hold them up some couldn't hold them up as much, and our offense just couldn't make as much plays as I wish we could have. But once again, I'm pretty happy with our performance. So.
All right, Lucas, before you go, I'm hoping you don't have a Twitter account, so I would love for you to answer our poll question that is up and rolling on Twitter at TimHill1075. How do you feel about the Gamecocks after that loss? You got 4 options, Lucas, okay? So stay with me here. Number 1 is encouraged. They fought hard. Number 2 is you feel the same as you felt going into the game. Number 3 is discouraged, dominated. And number 4 is I don't know how to feel. Where do you fall in that spectrum? It sounded like you want to go with number 1, encouraged and fought hard. Is that right, Lucas?
Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough.
I mean, we're not a number 1 or 2 team like Georgia and Alabama are, where we literally came into the game as like the 24th team or something like that. And that was mainly because we played 2 teams that weren't as great as us. So, I mean, we just kind of, we got some sense knocked into us, but, hopefully we could do better on this next game.
Thank you, Lucas. Got some sense knocked into him. Lucas is smarter than 95% of Gamecock fans and 100% of local analysts. He's 10. I think he's 12, by the way, Mark. Weighing in. Good to see you, Mark, on the Twitter live video stream this morning. Up and rolling on YouTube and Facebook Live as well. Plenty more messages rolling in on the Cool Care Heating and Air text line. That same number that Lucas just called on the Love Chevy phone lines at 803-404-6100. Matt says Carolina's 3-0 against the spread. So we're beating Vegas at least. Clemson Allen. 10 more points than Clemson. Clemson's still going to kill you. Sorry, Gamecock Larry. Dynamite dropped in from Allen there. Ted says the hype on the defensive line is absolute fake news. Their offensive line blew us off the ball all night. He's the first one to talk about the D-line, but I think it's certainly worth talking about as well, Patrick. That was more of a surprise to me, the consistency with which Georgia got a push than the other way around. I kind of expected it the other way around. I think it was logical for a lot of Gamecock fans to go into this game, having seen what the defense showed you in the first 2 weeks, hopeful that you would have a breakout game from the defense, a lot like what happened 2 years ago with Javon Kinlaw kind of wreaking havoc there, and you just didn't see it with Carolina's defensive line, or at least I didn't see it, and clearly the texter there didn't see it as well. Ted, what about you, Patrick?
Yeah, I mean, you really didn't see it anywhere on the defense. The defensive line was getting pushed, and then whenever Georgia's running backs would get to the second level, they're pretty much making the linebackers miss or carrying them. So the linebacker play wasn't great either. I think you only had 1 sack, if I remember correctly. I think that was all. That was all they mustered, and yeah, the secondary was just getting beat over the top. Yeah, Jalen Foster had 2 interceptions, but Jermaine Burton was getting over the top with ease. The first one was a bit of a communication error because Cam Smith wasn't really lined up when he just got the top taken off. But South Carolina got away with one of those too on the first drive with the Josh Van ball, so that evens out. Yeah, it was not what you expected, but the one thing about Georgia is they're always great on both lines of scrimmage. Their offensive line is really good. I don't know how many of them will end up going pro, but certainly a few. And Egbari had his work cut out for him going against Jamari Sawyer, and he pretty much lost that battle. So that's how it goes sometimes, and Georgia's a really good team, and it wasn't really one area where South Carolina looked really good, and it is more disappointing on the defense, but this was also what Vegas expected, because when you have a 30-point spread, presumably the team is going to score at least 30 points. So Georgia thought that we were completely outmatched on both sides, or Vegas thought that we were overmatched on both sides of the ball, and that's why for the poll question, I don't feel any different, because this was pretty much exactly what was expected going in. A little bit better, maybe.
Speaking of that poll question, that is leading the way right now. Same as I felt going in, 50% of the early vote encouraged, fought hard, 40% of the early vote. And our last option, I don't know how to feel, has the leftover votes in there in third place right now. No one has voted yet early on in the discouraged, dominated category. Interesting. And you mentioned Vegas there, Patrick. Kentucky, the early line coming into Columbia Saturday night, 7 o'clock. 5-point favorites against the Gamecocks. To me, that's a pretty fair line, I think, based on what we've seen so far this year. Also, the SEC network version of College Game Day, SEC Nation coming into town this weekend. Maybe we get Marty Smith back on the horn and tell us a few more stories this week. He'll be part of the circus atmosphere that will be the pregame festivities at Williams-Brice Stadium on Saturday night before that 7 o'clock kickoff. So good news there. I think it was John on the live video stream talking about be thankful that you get another tailgate coming up, more college football. Speaking of college football at large, that Alabama-Florida game I thought was pretty fantastic. College football, as always, seemingly pretty fantastic across the board in multiple ways. We'll get into some other scores and stories at least a little bit, but mainly focus on that Carolina 40-13 loss at Georgia over the weekend. Love to hear from you at 803-404-6100. It's the early game on 107.5 The Game.
Gamecock basketball head coach Frank Martin, and you're listening to 107.5 The Game, WNKT FM, Eastover, Columbia.
Professional help, that's what we need at my house for multiple reasons. We won't get into all those multiple reasons. I will tell you about one group of professionals that's been out to my house a couple of times and done a great job helping us get our home back to its best. It's feeling its best, looking its best, smelling its best. Zero Res, carpet and air duct clean. Zero Res, been out to our house a couple of times and cleaned our carpets, helped really freshen up the tiles in the kitchen and the bathroom, giving us great results and really impressed my wife in the process. That's not an easy thing to do, especially around the home. But Zero Res not only did that, they do it differently than any other carpet cleaner out there. They have a ZR, a patented ZR water now. It has no harsh chemicals involved in the cleaning process. Also, no leftover soapy residue involved in that cleaning process. So your carpets can stay cleaner longer like mine have, but no harsh chemicals involved in the process, especially important in my house with 3 boys always rolling around on the carpets. We had nothing to worry about. Zero Res also has a great deal for you right now. 3 rooms of carpet cleaned, only $119, plus a free hallway when you mention me, Tim Hill. Give Zero Res a call at 803-262-4020. You can book your appointment online right now at ZeroResColumbia.com. That's Zero Res. Spell it backwards or forwards. It's the right way to clean.
Clear. And from the Shepherd's Glass Traffic Center, Shepherd's Glass, a true reflection of quality, shepherdsglass.com. Going to start with an accident still being cleaned up.
John, rude. Just rude. But my wife is a Florida State grad, and first time since '76. Florida State's 0-3, 35-14.
And for your Monday morning traffic update, got 2 incidents to report right now. The first is going to be a collision.
Oh, that Patrick Ultra Series just getting it done this morning. Yeah, that's definitely what I'll say if you are an upset Gamecock fan this morning. I get it. You look over and you see what Georgia just did to you. Not what you want to see. Certainly don't want to see what Clemson's done recently, but oof, it could be Florida State bad. I'm just old. Yeah, just old. And I think the good news is it doesn't have to get Arkansas bad before it gets better, right? I mean, Arkansas the last couple of years have been just mind-boggling what Sam Pittman's done there. What did they go on, 21-game losing streak or something in the SEC?
Steven, no.
Yeah, I'm thinking he's too young for that, Steven.
It's a weak move. I mean, my dad didn't either. My dad grew up through the 3 Super Bowls, and he didn't.
Yeah, but if you are kind of a casual fan, I can see how that happens, right?
Yeah, I mean, the casual fans that are my age that grew up with parents, like the casual fans to me are the ones that grew up whose parents weren't football fans, so they got to pick.
Right.
And those kids in my area are Ravens fans now.
That's
They
easy.
grew up Ravens fans. That was a big issue since before the name change. Was the Ravens were taking our fan base away.
I'm sure it seems like that, Ron. I can actually look up some numbers. We'll go to the data on that, see what we got. Stats. 2021. We'll look up penalties here. Try to look at
I mean, truly, who got more? Arch Manning and Muschamp together definitely got more screen time than Beamer, I think. I can only see the reflection of this TV in the window while it's still dark, but every time I look up, it's Muschamp or Arch Manning.
So I'm going to just flip the fewest penalties per game and go towards the end. That's my brilliant way to look this up. Through 2 games, all it's got Carolina like tied for about 100 out of 130. Averaging 7.5 per game. The worst program was Ole Miss at 13 per game. Through 2 games is all the stats have. And that's the best you're going to get this morning, Ron, from Lake Marion. Did you see this? My old TV station there, ABC Columbia, Cam Gaskins is their weekend guy who made the trip over to Athens, had the camera rolling after Darius Rush gets beat for a big touchdown. Something I'd never seen before in my life. Patrick, did you see it? Do you know what I'm talking about? You know where I'm going here?
Is it the being cheered up?
Kind of. I wouldn't necessarily call it that. Rush has his hands on his hips, so you see a teammate come over and give him a tap on the helmet. And then you see Jalen Foster, and I'm mentioning this now. Eddie just hit me up with a reminder of the video here. Jalen Foster comes over as Darius Rush has his hands on his hips. Foster comes up from behind and knocks Rush's hands off his hips.
Yeah.
In the tweet at Cam Gaskins TV, by the way, if you haven't seen it, I retweeted it, I think last night at Tim Hill 1075, but it says to fix his body language and encourage him. And that's exactly what he's doing, Patrick.
Yeah.
He literally fixed his body language.
Yeah, physically fixed his body language.
Right, not literally. Thank you. I've never seen that in all my years of watching football. Have you ever seen a football teammate do that to another player, especially in major college football?
No, I don't think so, but I thought you were going to reference the part of the tweet where it says never saw any of this in the last 2 seasons I've covered the team. I thought that part was ridiculous. I was like, come on. The last 2 seasons, nobody's encouraged their teammates. What are we talking about here?
Right.
This is where some of the stuff I've seen this morning, it's like the most revisionist history possible. Like nothing good happened in the last 5 years because Muschamp was here, and the whole culture has changed now, and we're just overdoing with the culture change. It doesn't mean that the guys didn't care about each other in the past. Like that's a ridiculous thing to say.
Marshall wins that contest in hour number 1 on the Cool Care Heating and Air text line. He says, got whipped in every sense of the word. No big surprise there. What was great to see is those kids never quit when they had every reason to. Under Muschamp, we lose that game by 60.
Right. Last time we were in Sanford Stadium, Muschamp beat that team. So you're probably right, though, Marshall.
No, his point, I can understand it about being encouraged about moving forward. That's one thing, right? Can go a little over the top there with what's happened the last few years in the culture of the whole thing. Fortunately, we got a couple more hours to hash it out here. Love to hear from you at 803-404-6100. It's the early game on 107.5 The Game. too, RL. I thought that was awesome.
Yeah, I loved it too. I don't know Cam Gaskin, but when I saw that, I've never seen this in the last 2 years, the encouragement, I was like, come on.
I mean, you could have just said, I've never seen that before in football.
The actual pushing his hands off his hips part, I agree. But just the idea that this stuff never happened before, it's just crazy.
Right. I'm going to go run upstairs real quick, Patrick, say goodbye to my peeps. You good in there?
All right.
You take over.
Yeah, time to catch up on the text line, see what everybody's saying. Oh, yeah, we need to talk. Oh, good timing, John. We do need to talk about taunting because it was a big thing in the NFL yesterday, too. And everything I saw on Twitter was just people saying, this is the dumbest rule in the world, which I agree with, but it doesn't get people off the hook. You know the rules. The taunting penalty, the Josh Van taunting penalty was just dumb. Like, yes, do I think it should be penalized? No, I don't think it should be penalized. It's not a big deal. It's part of the game, and I actually like to see it. When you know that's the rule, and you know that's the one thing you can't do, it's just dumb. Just don't get in the guy's face right after you make a play when everyone on the field is watching you, and you're fine. It's really not that hard. I get being fired up, but keeping your composure is not a hard thing to do. Gabe says nothing good did happen under Muschamp, Patrick. Okay. Agreed. Nothing good happened. I mean, I agree he had to get fired, but the way we're talking about it is like wasn't as bad as as we remember it, or we want to remember it. He did beat that Georgia team. Yeah, I mean, ultimately just know the rules. There's no way you haven't been told, hey, this is the one thing you can't do. Don't lean towards a guy and get in his face. It's the one thing you can't do. You can get up and walk away from the guy and flex or do whatever you want. Just don't lean down at him. It's basically the exact DJ Swearinger play. Just don't do that, and you're fine. It's happened 2 weeks in a row on big plays. Because I think that, I don't know how it would have changed, but I think that I think the Van play was a big play that brought him to maybe like midfield, close to midfield, and then backed us up to like our own 35, something like that. Kept us in our own territory, and we had to punt it, and could have been points. Especially when you got a kicker who's automatic. Goodness gracious. I don't know. Everybody's got their thing. Everyone's got their tick or whatever it is, but that's just Beamer's thing, I guess. He claps a lot. He's a big time clapper. Trying to keep things positive. Saban's a yeller. I don't know what Dabo is. Dabo's a yeller. Another person just sent us a video of Dabo sprinting. The word is broken bone in his ankle. Probably going to be out for the season. It sucks when it's just hard to watch when the person's rolling around like that. You could tell that he was clearly in just excruciating pain. And you have to have the training staff like holding him still because he's just rolling around so much. That is really difficult to watch.
What's Lester bitter about there?
We were talking about the taunting thing, and I just said I don't care about it, but when you know it's the rule, just don't. You know the one thing you can't do, and 2 weeks in a row, South Carolina's done the one thing you can't do.
Josh Van, you're talking about?
Yeah, and there was stuff. There was a couple of them in the NFL that were called yesterday.
Yeah, I saw people complaining about the NFL stuff.
But I mean, it's the same deal. Like, you know the rule. Saying that you disagree with the concept of it doesn't excuse being dumb.
So are you one of those? Like I saw Pearson put out, there should be no taunting penalties or there should be no taunting. Yeah, I think penalties or fouls or whatever in all the sports.
Not necessarily. I mean, I wasn't offended by what Josh Van did. If that wasn't a rule and it didn't get penalized, I'd be completely fine with that. But it's just saying that excuses the stupidity of doing something you know is not allowed.
Right. To me, there's a huge difference between celebrating a good play and taunting. And taunting absolutely should be a penalty. When you stand over someone and flex, an easy call.
Yeah, I mean, it's just stupid. Cam Smith and Josh Van could have done the exact same thing if they weren't facing the person, and it wouldn't have been a penalty.
Right. And to me, that is the line of sportsmanship. And if you're doing it to the other team, you've crossed the line. Just celebrate with your team. It's very simple. Celebrate the play. I mean, I hate the fact that you're even drawing the attention to yourself and thumping your own chest or pointing to your own back. Like, to me, that's completely selfish to begin with and already crosses that line. But I'm not going to be that old school and say that you have to be team only or whatever. You can celebrate your play, draw attention to yourself if you got to. But, man, you don't do it in someone else's face, clearly. But that's an old guy, gas baggy hot take. Yeah, that ain't gonna happen, Lester. Carolina might win the game. They ain't gonna manhandle Kentucky. I can tell you that right now. I think what we've seen is Eastern Illinois is going to be the only opponent that the Gamecocks will manhandle.
Yeah.
You say I am pretty secure in that statement in 2021 through 3 games. Hopefully. There's a difference between hopefully and in my dreams.
Let's see. Troy is 2-1.
Yeah, I hear you, Robin.
Troy's 2-1. Their only loss to the Liberty.
What's that, Patrick?
So Troy's 2-1, and their only loss is the Liberty.
Who were their wins against, though?
Southern Mississippi and Southern University.
Right.
Southern Miss has had good teams, haven't they?
No, Southern Miss has been down for a while.
Not like I follow them, but I know they put a kid in the NFL, Nick Mullins.
Well, I mean, they used to be a really good program, but not since Larry Fedora left.
Where is Nick Mullins now? Browns. All right.
We'll start on the Cool Care Heating and Air text line from Bill W. in West Columbia. No shock about that Gamecock outcome. Glad to see the effort. Several things need fixing sooner rather than later, penalties, etc. And about Muschamp, he should be paying USC for damages. He's laughing all the way to the bank. Have a good day. I think that pretty much sums up the 40-13 loss over the weekend for Carolina at Georgia. Patrick, what about you?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, the broadcast really didn't help, showing Muschamp a million times and continuously talking about him. It just fired people up when it was already a 30-point game. But I think Muschamp's
you didn't expect that going in?
No, I did. It's just more annoying than I thought it would be this morning.
Okay.
Misplaced.
Just a place to channel the anger or disappointment, discouragement, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't work out with Muschamp, and I think he should have gotten fired, and I'm glad Beamer's here, but what are we doing talking about, like, Muschamp completely destroyed the program, left the cupboard bare. Like, every good player we're talking about here, Josh Van, Luke Doty, Kingsley Enagbari, like, they were all recruited by Muschamp. He didn't completely destroy the program, and we're acting like he was just this awful guy that came in here and sabotaged the program just to leave. I mean, we all wanted to give it a chance. We all wanted it to work. Some people disagreed with the hire from the beginning. It never really worked out, but it wasn't. We're just completely exaggerating the fact that it's as bad as it is, and I'm just rolling my eyes. I'm just rolling my eyes a lot this morning.
Fair enough. Justin says what I was expecting happened during the game Saturday night. The one thing that's frustrating, the dumb penalties we had. The holdings, that's inevitable because they got some dudes up front. But the false starts and the stupid unsportsmanlike conduct calls have to stop. They killed any positive momentum we had at times. I think Justin's spot on there, especially with the inevitable holding calls and what happened with Georgia's defensive line and Carolina's offensive line. I get your frustration this morning. I don't get your surprise because that was the matchup on paper. I think we just saw it play out. Now, I think seeing Beamer's as frustrated as anybody else. You saw him. That's the most fired up we've seen him on the sideline. And it makes sense. First time he's lost in his head coaching career now. But just unacceptable. I think especially the procedural issues, right? Playing clean football was a big part of the preseason talk. And especially when you're a first-year head coach, you want to make sure that is priority number one when you got a new coaching staff in general, but especially offensive coordinator. That's the hardest part I think to get on the same page about. And especially when you're playing the number 2 team in the country at their place at night, you got to be near perfect from that standpoint. And Carolina was anything but. Maybe it was to be expected with the quarterback issues there. And speaking of that, Zeb Nolan going out early in that one when his hand got stepped on after that weird play. We discussed it in hour number 1. And I think you and I are on the same page, Patrick. If the referees, the officials on the field would have just called the play dead after Zeb Nolan clearly throws the ball into the back of his offensive line's helmet instead of doing what I guess officials are pulled up to do these days, because you can go back and overturn it on replay, but you can't do the opposite, right? If you blow a play dead, you can't then go back and recreate it and let the defense scoop it up and go score if they had the opportunity to or whatever. But Papa Joe says, this is kind of water under the bridge, but do you all think that Georgia guy stepped on Zeb's hand on purpose? No, Joe. No, I do not. What about you, Patrick?
No, I think he was just playing football, but it shouldn't have happened at all. Are there not enough refs on the field? Is that what it is? Why are NFL refs just better at their job? I mean, obviously they are because they're in the biggest league in the world, but are there more people on the field? Is that why they have better sight lines and able to do things? I've never actually counted up the refs on the field because the college guys are just always out of place. They miss spot 1 out of 5 balls, even if it's by half a yard and it's not ultimately the biggest deal, but they're always misspotting balls and just always in the wrong place. It's very frustrating.
Patrick, have you ever been down on the field for one of these games?
No. Well, kind of. Not really. I haven't really paid attention, though.
It moves so fast.
Well, yeah, but they make a lot of money. This is their job.
Not college refs. Well, I mean, not any ref. That's not their full-time job that I know of. It's kind of a weekend gig. They do make good money, and it is a job, no doubt. But I think you're comparing it to the NFL, where I am amazed time and time again watching the NFL game, where I'm watching it on my screen, and it's clear to me, just sitting on my couch or recliner, in a very comfortable recliner, that I can see what yard line the ball went down, but then you see the official on the side judge running up, and they seem to get it spot on in the NFL nearly every time.
But that's because they're in the right place. I'm not even criticizing them for the game going too fast and them not seeing it right, but yeah, the game goes fast, but you should still be able to see a guy get drilled in the helmet with a football. And then there's one particular play, I don't know if anybody else was watching, when Alabama was running out the clock against Florida, or trying to. They threw a ball to their tight end who stretched it over the first down line, was tackled out of bounds, and clearly stretched over the first down line by at least a yard. But the ref is standing behind the defender tackling him. So there's a defender and then the Alabama player stretching the ball out, and he marks the ball over a yard short. And you're just watching it like, dude, if you're standing on the first down marker, where I assume you're supposed to be standing when you're trying to watch a first down, you're easily going to see him stretch the ball out, but you're standing behind the play. You can't even see the football, and you're just going to run over there and spot the ball like you know where it's actually supposed to go. I mean, they can't have any confidence in these spots, and then they have to go review it, and 10 minutes later, we come back and say, yeah, it actually is a first down, which every single person watching on TV would have noticed immediately. So I just don't understand the not being in the right spot, because that part should be pretty easily fixable.
I should have put this as an option in our poll question this morning. How do you feel about Gamecock football after the 40-13 loss at Georgia? I went with encouraged, same as you felt going in, discouraged, or you don't know how to feel. I could have said channeling frustration into the refs. That's what I just heard from you, Patrick.
No, I mean, not really. I mean, I was frustrated by it, but I'm not saying, like, I don't come in here and say the refs lost us a game. And I thought against East Carolina, people were a little bit overblowing some of the things the refs did because ultimately the right calls were made. It's just simple things that waste time when it's already a blowout and I just want the game to end. Why are we wasting 10 minutes on spotting a ball that you should have gotten right the first time?
Anonymous texter just says SEC officials are the absolute worst. The unsportsmanlike on ban was absurd.
Okay.
Honking is one thing, but barking a little bit is part of the game. No, man. They had to make that call. That's what they're doing now. That's the emphasis this year. And Robin hit us up on the live video stream saying it's hard to teach our students good sportsmanship when you see this in sports all over the place. To me, I get where some of you guys are coming from. I know Pearson Fowler is a big, hey, there shouldn't be taunting at all, ever. But I got 8 and 6 year olds I'm coaching and trying to do it the right way. And I think absolutely they should call those things. And it's very simple. When you do it towards the other team, obviously, that's crossing the line. Celebrate all you want to with your team. If it was a celebration penalty only, where your team, that's where I really get. That's where I think the referees cross the line. You ever see these idiots, these super refs hop in while a team is celebrating and literally like pull the guys apart? They're just celebrating with their team, man. Hey, dummy, just because one day a week you travel to a game, get paid 4 figures for being there, for throwing your little laundry up and making a few calls, just because you do that, what about the blood, sweat, and tears, the dedication, how much these guys have poured into it, and then they finally make a play and you're going to pull them apart? There is excessive celebration, but I feel like referees more often than not are the excessive ones there in a lot of cases. But the taunting thing is really simple, man. You're dumb enough to make a play and there's one guy near you and you're going to stand over him or clearly put your head down and talk in his face, then that's going to get called every time.
Yeah.
And it should. And Shane Beamer, after the game, kind of exasperated about it, said, yeah, that's not the way we're going to play Carolina football, but I said the same crap before, and clearly it's not getting through. And to me, this is where the culture conversation actually is relevant, Patrick, and where we see tangible evidence of a clear, poor culture. That's what basketball teams do, right? You get bad 15-yard, unsportsmanlike, dead ball penalties. That's just poured across the board. There are no good teams. Maybe Miami back in the 80s might have been the only team that I remember in the college football history that could do that, that was good enough to get away with that. I get it. You guys want to say DJ Swearinger can do that. Okay. But he didn't do that consistently. He flexed at Clemson. What was it? The UAB game, the classic one where he got several in a row. But those are the exceptions, right? In between that, Steve Spurrier had the culture to keep him in line most of the time and to harness that energy in the right way.
I saw DJ used as examples on Twitter of the opposite of that, the side of the texter where it was like, don't tell me that this taunting's too much, but then say you were a DJ Swearinger fan too. So, I mean, there was a lot of people I saw on Twitter saying these taunts are getting out of hand. Like, they got to stop calling this and let the guys play. I don't even care about any of that. It's just, when you know what the rule is, don't be dumb. Like, there's literally one thing you can't do, and it's get in a guy's face after a play and flex on him or whatever you're going to do. Turn around, flex to the crowd or your bench, it's fine. But everyone on the field, especially when it's a deep ball, Cam Smith was on the sideline. They were away from everyone. Josh Vans was a deep ball. They're the only people within 20 yards of each other. Everyone on the field and in the stadium is watching only you two people. And immediately the one thing you do is the only thing you can't do. It's just arguing that the taunts are shouldn't be called or shouldn't be a penalty is irrelevant, and excusing the fact that it is, and it was stupid because it's the one thing you can't do. And you can say that that's not what we do here. Shane Beamer can say that, but 2 out of 3 games on big plays, that's what they've done. The only team that doesn't do that is Alabama, because the guys don't play when they do that.
Well, and there are other programs set up with enough talent to where you can really punish guys. Carolina's just not in that spot right now. RL was still in the game on that drive after the flex. He might have come back in towards the tail end of that drive, but he was immediately taken out. And the shot on TV was Beamer right there talking to him.
So that's the problem. Your best corner and your best wide receiver were the ones that did that. So they're setting the example, and you can't afford to take them out.
Exactly. And I can understand it, right? There have been a lot of great plays made in the last couple of years with 16 combined losses. You got to cut that out. And Shane Beamer knows that better than anybody, and clearly frustrated about that as much or more than anybody. Danny says you guys talk about that sweet Jalen Brooks catch. Haven't talked about that yet. It was a heck of a play, wasn't it?
Ridiculous.
A heck of a play. You get more. And somebody else texted in how they're encouraged about the receivers and the whole thing. I think that was, if you're looking for a positive sign moving forward, certainly Josh Vans' play, but also that catch by Jalen Brooks, maybe that will get both of those guys a shot of confidence that they can continue to build upon to be productive players moving forward, Patrick.
Was it the best catch of the day in college football?
Yes, much better. I mean, athletically, no, right? The play of the day and maybe the year was the interception by the Oklahoma guy. But it was a dumb football play that lost his team 21 yards. Just dumb.
Yeah.
You don't understand? Why do you say it like that?
I do. Yeah, but that doesn't mean it wasn't a sweet play.
It was an amazing athletic feat. It was a dumb play. Can we agree on that? When you lose your team,
I guess. Yeah,
I
guess. But it's still an interception. You still turned it over, and it's hard to think in that moment, don't catch this ball.
No,
don't
it's not.
This ball.
I told 8-year-old flag football players yesterday, hey, guys, it's 4th down.
I mean, it's not.
If you can't return it for a touchdown, don't just knock it down 20 yards down here, safeties, because we all up there instead of back here. That ain't very difficult at all, Patrick. Don't give me that.
I guess, but it's not the Hail Mary in SMU where they try to catch it and bounce it right into the guy's arms.
I mean, how about
it's just a bang bang play. He's going back and trying to catch the ball. That's SMU.
Yeah. So that was probably the best catch of the weekend, then, right? The one that wins you the game, even though it was just a freak right into somebody's hands, and somehow the defender just left that
Oklahoma
guy.
Transfer too. Tanner Mordecai chucking that thing.
See, and he put it perfectly, right? He could have. You see, I see guys all the time, I feel like, just chuck it out of the end zone too deep there, or not throw it high enough or whatever. He threw it perfectly high, gave guys plenty of time, gave the defenders who were they playing? Was that Louisiana Tech? I think it was, right?
Yeah, it was La Tech.
Gave La Tech guys plenty of time to get out of position, and they get the perfect bounce win on a Hail Mary in the last second. Tremendous game there for sure. Tremendous win for Fresno State over UCLA. If we're talking about the zoomed out picture in college football from the SEC standpoint, that Florida-Bama game, it looked like it was going to be a usual Bama blowout, 21-3, and then Florida just battles its way back. That 2-point conversion play. Ugh. If you're in Florida on this Monday morning, good luck with that. If you really want to be upset with coaches, I think that would be the time to do it. On that play call was rough to see, but a fun game to watch. And I think what I saw over the weekend, Patrick, has me convinced that this year is a little bit different than the last several years, where I felt like it's been top heavy in college football, and a little bit boring because of it, right? Clearly, Clemson is not going to be a dominant team this year when you win 14-8 against Georgia Tech. When you when you had 2 rushing yards against Georgia, when you failed to score a touchdown there. I get it. Defense is still really good. Haven't allowed a touchdown all year. I think the only team in the country. There's no doubt about that. I'm not taking shots this morning. I'm just saying, Clemson fans, you clearly know your offense isn't that good, or certainly is nowhere near what it's been in the past and needs a lot of work. Alabama clearly is not that dominant team that's just going to blow through the SEC when you saw Florida have the comeback it did and be right there to force overtime. You disagree there, Patrick? You think?
Well,
I thought you had Florida down.
No. Yeah, I mean, I don't think Florida's that good, but I think Bama and Georgia are the 2 teams that you can say, all right, it's these guys and everybody else at this point. I mean, Ohio State, C.J. Stroud has been he's probably thrown for like 1,500 yards at this point, but still somehow hasn't been good. Like last week had the worst 450-yard passing game I've ever seen.
How about the freshman running for 277?
Yeah, Travion Henderson, he's a beast. So Ohio State's not what they are. Their defense is terrible. They were terrible last year too, and their defense has been an issue for a couple years now. Oklahoma has struggled to beat mediocre teams a couple times now. They're not what we expected. Maybe these teams, maybe they can figure it out later in the year and really get things humming. But right now it's Alabama and Georgia. But I think Alabama – I thought they were going to smoke Florida because I don't think Florida's that good. But they still won the game. And the weird thing about that, though, was when it's 21-6, what I've always found about Alabama is that when they've got someone down, when they smell blood, they just kill you. Like, you have no hope of coming back against Alabama normally, where most teams would take their foot off the gas and you have a chance to claw back. That never happens against Alabama, and this time it did. I mean, they scored 10 points in the last 3 quarters altogether, I think, something like that. And that was just very uncharacteristic of an Alabama team. But they still beat an 11th ranked team in the country on their home field. The Swamp was rocking. It was probably the biggest game in the Swamp in a couple years now, or the best crowd in the Swamp in a couple years now. So it's still not something to be ashamed of, only winning that game by 2. And I'm sure they will circle the wagons next week and smoke whoever they've got.
803-404-6100. Love to hear your thoughts this morning. You can call or text that same number, 404-6100. We'll let you hear some of what Shane Beamer had to say after the Georgia game Saturday night, the 40-13 loss for the Gamecocks. Also got the poll question up and rolling right now. Same as I felt going in, more than half the votes right now about how you feel about Gamecock football after the 40-13 loss at Georgia football. In second place with 34% of the vote, encouraged and fought hard. Interesting. It's the early game. It's 107.5. Ross, that's weak, man. Are there any examples of Georgia receivers making a big play and then directly taunting the corner who was right there everybody's looking at? I think to this point, that's what it looks like, Lester. I don't disagree with that. What about you, Patrick?
No, I agree. I mean, I think Georgia's more balanced than Alabama this year, but I'm not in the camp that Georgia should be ranked number 1.
Right, and they're close.
Beating South Carolina when Alabama beat Florida, Alabama has the right to remain number 1 until we see otherwise.
Yeah, I got the polls pulled up. 59 of 62 AP votes go to Alabama, so Georgia got 3. Georgia got 1 of the 65 votes in the coaches poll. So clearly, there ain't much controversy. Oklahoma's number 3 in the coaches poll. Oregon's number 3 in the AP top 25. Then they're flipped in the other one. Iowa's at 5 in the AP. Texas A&M's at 5. That's what I'm talking about. Texas A&M at 5 can barely beat Colorado. Oregon, I think, I get it. They've been pretty good this year, but the fact that they're number 3 right now and Oklahoma at 4.
I just don't see Oregon finishing this schedule unscathed.
Agreed.
I guess when I look at it, I don't know who's going to beat them. They go to UCLA the end of October.
That could definitely happen.
They go to Seattle 2 weeks after that.
Yeah, not this year.
Don't think so. People were high on Washington before the season, too.
Mm-hmm. Can we come back with Beamer on the offensive line question there?
Yep. Do you want the question in it?
If you got it there, it's fine.
Yeah.
You play it cold, it'll make more sense. I would prefer it in there if you got it.
Yeah, I recorded the whole thing.
Good.
Oh, yeah. Did you see that North Carolina catch?
Yeah, that was tremendous right back. Pylon there, full extension.
Yep.
So I would go that number 1, Jalen Brooks number 2, the interception number 3. If I was ranking the top place.
They're all better than anything we saw in the NFL yesterday, probably.
What are you talking about over there? Is that a DJ deal? Is that a Olinsky deal? Is that just random? I don't understand there. Did I miss something, Patrick?
Bryce Young, I don't know what that means.
Bryce Young's not from California.
JT Daniels? Yeah, it is. Bryce Young went to the same school as JT Daniels.
Did he really?
Yeah, latter day.
No, it's a factory. I didn't realize that. Alex, appreciate it, man. Where are you at in Texas? I used to live in Abilene, in the middle of nowhere. I think Whit also is a daily listener from Fort Worth.
Just want to step out of the game.
Ooh, San Antonio. Nice. Moved from Columbia, I'm guessing. That's quite the culture change, I would imagine. Never made it to San Antonio when I was there. One place I wanted to go.
Got
Pretty good things.
young Sean.
Got it.
Didn't have much to say.
Joshua, Texas. Sounds familiar, but couldn't nail it down for you, Lester.
We're back.
Going straight in?
Yep.
Defensive line over there. Just what were they doing to maybe make things physical on the offensive side and maybe being able to get a push?
They've got like 100 5-star football players on their defense. They have a defensive lineman that weighs 340 pounds and runs better than everybody on this call. They've got 5-star defensive backs. They're big and physical and fast. I mean, other than that, they're really freaking good. That's why they have the top defense in the country. They're hard to run the football on. So there wasn't some magical scheme they came out with tonight. They got 5-star recruits everywhere, and they play really physical. Damn.
Shane Beamer, clearly frustrated. I believe the question from the Statesman Portnoy about what the defensive line did. And that's the first time I get it, being frustrated and disappointed and coming off the field and emotional. And Shane's a bit of an emotional guy, relatively even keel, but fiery, aggressive, optimistic, typically enthusiastic. Feel like he fell for a trick there. That's the old media trick of clearly you're asking a question that you know the answer to. That's the old John Grisham line too. I read these John Grisham books, and that's what they say lawyers should always do. You never ask a question you don't know the answer to in the court. Mm-hmm. And I think it goes for us media nerds a lot of times too. You're asking a question in anticipation of getting an answer that you can use in your story, right? A big part of this story was Georgia's defensive line being dominant. So an easy question to ask a coach is, why did that happen? Or how did that happen? I mean, clearly you know that going into the game, there was more talent on that side of the ball, and Georgia's really good in the whole thing. But you need to put something in quotes if you're a writer and get the coach's take on it. And I feel like maybe Shane got lost in that trick to thinking that Ben didn't know how that happened or was maybe confused or unsure. No, that's not the case at all. In a lot of these questions, they just need to get a quote, man. And I get the frustration there. But, Patrick, I think that's a bit of an insight into where a lot of response that we've heard from this morning is coming from as well. The disappointment in that offensive line, because you heard both Shane Beamer, we've heard from Marcus Satterfield in the first couple of weeks, especially after the East Carolina game. But even after the Eastern Illinois game, that was the first bit of a warning sign where South Carolina's offensive line did not dominate that game. Now, they clearly were much more talented and had no problem with Eastern Illinois in a 46-0 win. I'm not saying that it was a struggle to any stretch of the imagination, but it wasn't dominant. And if you're not going to dominate Eastern Illinois, then you struggle at East Carolina, because that's what happened in week 2. But we heard from the coaches that, hey, I get it. That's what a layman would think looking at things, but you don't understand what the quarterback may have slid the protection over there. You might have thought the defense was doing a little something different, not the offensive lineman's fault. Okay. But we've seen now a pretty solid representation, pretty solid sample size in a college football season. That's 12 games on the season. We've seen a quarter of it through 3 games against varied levels of competition. And it's a pretty easy conclusion to get to right now that the offensive line is certainly not in the top half of the SEC. And I feel like this is a conversation that happens in Columbia nearly every year, where you get the preseason, hey, this offensive line's looking pretty good. It's going to be a strength of the team. But then compared to other SEC offensive lines, it's not quite there. I feel like we've seen this consistently in the last several years. Now, just because we've seen this in the first 3 games doesn't mean that things aren't going to improve. You got a first-year offensive coordinator, first-year offensive line coach. Communication, I get it. I can see how that's an issue early on. You got experienced guys, though, on that offensive line. I think that's where that preseason discussion came from, Patrick. That's where the expectation came from, and that's where, very logically and reasonably, I think that's where a lot of disappointment is coming from this morning from Gamecock fans. Now, to go on the other side, though, you do have to understand exactly what Shane said. They're really, really good.
Yeah.
And that's the difficult, I think, the difficult part to marry right now, maybe internally for a lot of Carolina fans. So where do you go from here? What are you expecting against Kentucky kind of thing, and the next 3 games after that are really going to tell the tale of the season?
Well, but so I agree about the defensive line, of course. They're ridiculously talented, and it is frustrating to watch. Like, there's probably not a pro on the South Carolina offensive line. There was some buzz about Dylan Wonnum. Really just started being all freshman SEC, pretty much starting as a freshman all year. And he was getting just beat by Will Anderson as a stud, or Adam Anderson. Will Anderson is the Alabama player. Adam Anderson, all day long, just beating him to the edge left and right. But I think what might be more concerning is just there was a lot of communication errors. Like, I can think of 3 particular times where Nakobe Dean when the ball was snapped on a pass play, he waited 1 second, and then there was a hole in like the A gaps on either side, and he would just fly right through there, and nobody would even get a hand on him, and he'd have a free run right at the quarterback. So I don't know what they need to do for that, but I mean, you see Eric Douglas or one of the guards looking for somebody to block, and just before you know it, Nakobe Dean is running right by him and blowing out the quarterback. So there were clearly communication errors. You can live with, I mean, you're not happy about it because it just shows that there's a talent deficiency. You can live with one-on-one, your guys getting beat. You can live with Jordan Davis pushing people through, pushing the center into the back of the quarterback. That just is what it is. He's a great player. He's 340 pounds. He's a freak show. He's going to be a first-round pick. That is what it is. But when guys are getting free runs and no one's even putting a hand on them, that's where I don't know how to fix it. I don't know how to coach, how they're supposed to coach that up. But you know that it's not supposed to happen.
Beth from Lamar on the Cool Care Heating and Air text line. Has anyone asked or commented on the fact that the offensive line looked like they weren't sure who or where to block? And I'm sure that question will come up in greater detail. The weekly press conference for Shane Beamer on Tuesday, and then Marcus Satterfield's Wednesday press conference. We'll learn a little bit more, I would imagine, if they want to let that out there. But again, that's where I'm taking the comments that we heard the last couple of weeks about, hey, I know you guys are thinking just from the outside looking in, the offensive line has struggled, but it's not necessarily their fault. Well, how will that conversation evolve here after what we just saw? We need to take a quick break here. 803-404-6100. It's the early game on 107.5 The Game.
This is South Carolina head women's basketball coach Dawn Staley, and you're listening to the home of the Gamecocks, WNKT FM, Eastover, Columbia, 107.5 The Game.
Hagerty is powered by people who love cars like me. Hey, I'm Brad Giles from Giles Brothers Insurance. A policy through Hagerty allows occasional pleasure use of your classic car with no fixed mileage restrictions. So you can go for a weekend drive or attend unlimited events and cruises. And because they specialize in collector car insurance, premiums through Hagerty are up to 39% lower than daily driver insurance. Let Giles Brothers Insurance help you enjoy your classic car. Visit gilesbrothers.com. That's GILES brothers.com.
Are you in the market for a diamond but aren't sure what to get? For example, do you buy a mine diamond or are you thinking about lab grown? Hey, this is Scott with Traditions Fine Jewelers, and we want to help you decide because at Traditions, we carry a large selection of both mined and lab-grown diamonds. A mine diamond is traditional. It was formed in the earth millions of years ago and was discovered.
I just had so many brilliant points as I'm talking to myself. Thanks for the heads up there, Alex. Got to switch the buttons. So I was just saying, Chris, somebody else on the text line said, yeah, that fans would love that answer. And I get that, but Hope, I don't think it was calculated. And I think Shane apologizing to Ben at the end of his media deal saying, I didn't mean to snap on you. That was just him being caught up in the emotion of it. And there's nothing wrong with it necessarily. I'm just guessing that he'll try to avoid that moving forward because nothing wrong with what he said there, but you do it in another setting, in a different type of way, that's where you get yourself in trouble as a head coach, I think. And that's what you got to avoid.
Fans would not have loved that answer if Will Muschamp said it.
But yeah, it's just how they say it, right? Or just who they are. But also it's baggage attached and records and the whole thing too. Yeah, but again, you saw the players after the game, right? They clearly hold no ill will to Muschamp and the whole thing, man.
If Muschamp said the exact same thing that Shane Beamer said, people would have hated it.
I think it was the second question, Chris. It might have been the first one. He gave a bit of an opening statement and then said it. It was like 2 minutes in. You might be right.
New guy gets the first question.
What's that?
So the new guy getting the first question?
Yeah, it was the first. It might have been. I thought it might have been the second one. Either way, you're right. It might have been different if it would happen later on in the media session there. But yeah, that part I think that Muschamp never got that Beamer does. I feel like when Muschamp got emotional at all, it would just come off as the wrong way to fans because you were clearly not part of the team. So it was almost like he was getting on you in some way, as opposed to Beamer, who makes you feel like you are a part of the team and you can rally around him to some degree. You disagree, Patrick?
Yeah, I mean, I guess. But for that particular answer, it wasn't like that. It was more like, dumb question, man. They're just a lot better than us. It wasn't anything schematically. They're just better.
Right.
Can't you see that? All right, you're up.
You did, Alex. You did see that Kentucky has opened up a 5-point favorite to Carolina Saturday night, 7 o'clock at Williams-Brice after the 40-13 loss to Georgia. Kentucky pretty solid this season, but didn't look very good over the weekend where they played Tennessee Chattanooga and beat them by 10. In college football, you never know exactly. If you're going to try to do the transitive property that you like to mention periodically, Patrick, you're going to get in trouble real quick. But I thought it was relatively good news that you saw that final score from Kentucky and you saw East Carolina come back and beat Marshall on the road over the weekend. You would, I think, have preferred that going in. But that doesn't necessarily mean anything. That 5-point spread that Vegas has Saturday night's game about what I expected. Didn't quite expect the 30-point spread for Georgia and Carolina, and they covered 3-0. Somebody pointed out on the Cool Care Heating and Air text line against the Vegas line this year, the Gamecocks are. So that's something, Patrick. I don't know how much, but it's something.
Something for people that bet South Carolina blindly every week.
Love Chevy phone lines, 803-404-6100. Cool Care Heating and Air text line just flooded this morning. This week is the litmus test for this season. Change my mind, Trey says. I think he's dead on, Patrick. What about you?
Litmus test for this Kentucky game is?
Yes. For the 2021 season, this is the test. This is where a lot of people, their final determinations, or a huge determination, I should say, maybe not final, but a huge determination based on Gamecock football, because last week I asked you guys how you felt about that East Carolina 20-17 win. Now this week I'm asking how you felt about the 40-13 loss. And let me do this math here. 89% are either same as you felt going in or encouraged. So same as I felt going in is the most popular answer this morning on that poll question at Sim Hill 1075, 55% of you. But 33% of you going with encouraged and fought hard. I don't know how to feel is in a distant third place, and a very few of you are weighing in with discouraged, dominated in fourth place today. Again, that's more than 130 votes at this point at Sim Hill 1075 if you would like to join the poll question today or weigh in yourself. Patrick, what about you? Where are you going? You're going with I don't know how to feel, or same as I felt going in?
Same as I felt going in. I maybe didn't expect South Carolina to score 13 points, but that was about the gap in talent that I expected. As far as this weekend, I'm trying to think of this. I think Kentucky being the litmus test is probably pretty spot on. I mean, I think Kentucky. I think they're a better team than South Carolina. I think their offense is substantially better than South Carolina. I think Will Levis makes them a different monster. Wan'Dale Robinson is great. Their rushing attack is probably right around as good as South Carolina's. I think South Carolina does have better backs, but Kentucky's offensive line is substantially better. So I'm just trying to think, is this the litmus test or is Tennessee the litmus test? But at the very least, this is a home game. It's at night. Should be a great environment. If you want to get to 6 wins, you obviously, if you want to go to a bowl game, you have to win this game, because if you're not winning this game, it's hard to believe that you're going to go to Columbia, Missouri and win that game. I don't think Tennessee is good at all. So I think you should be able to go into Knoxville and get a win there. So, I mean, I guess that's about right. You want to know where you are in the pecking order. If Kentucky comes into your home stadium and whoops you, well, then you know you've got even further to go than you think, because Georgia is a ways better than everyone else in the Eastern Conference right now, or Eastern Division. And yeah, I think that's probably pretty fair. 5 points, I think, is an extremely fair number. I think if Kentucky if Will Levis didn't throw 2 touchdowns last week and Kentucky scored a couple more touchdowns and handled Chattanooga easier, this would be over a touchdown. So I think 5 points is very fair for South Carolina, and I wouldn't feel comfortable at this point taking that. I think Kentucky looked awesome against Missouri. I think they're a really good team. I think Kentucky and Missouri are really good teams. So if you can beat this Kentucky team on your home field, that's really saying something. They're not Kentucky of old. They can beat you in a lot of different ways. And if you can win this game, the future might be you might be able to get to where you want to get faster than we previously thought.
Well, to me, this Kentucky game at a 5-point spread, I am assuming the Tennessee game will be about that in Knoxville, where Tennessee will be favored by about that much. I assume Missouri will be favored at least by that much, maybe a little bit more at that point. It's a ways off. But those 3 games, if you don't want to go a 1-game litmus test, you want to go those 3 games, I'm okay with that. That seems fair to me. But if you want to use this one, say, hey, if Carolina can't compete in a game like this, then I'm going to project forward that it's going to be really difficult to do that in those other 2 games. I can see that. I've seen a lot of other people saying that the next 4 games will really tell the tale of this season, because you got Kentucky and Troy at home the next 2 weeks. Then you got at Tennessee and then Vanderbilt back home. 4 winnable games. And you're not going to be able to say that in that next 4-game stretch, the final 5 games, where you got, it looks like on paper right now, with Auburn performing pretty well, I thought, at Penn State over the weekend, it looks like be double-digit dogs, maybe in all of those games, all of those last 5 games, at Texas A&M, Florida at home, at Missouri, Auburn, and Clemson. Maybe you get 5 to 9 points at Missouri. We still don't know exactly what that team is with Eli Drinkwitz in year number 3 there. But I think I'm going to go the next 4-game stretch as opposed to just a 1-game litmus test. But I do feel like Trey's point, that it's the best one so far this season, no doubt, because you've seen 3 games so far with varying levels of competition, right? Eastern Illinois, you can't get a bigger cupcake game right now in college football when you're an SEC team. At East Carolina, group of 5 team, pretty good, okay, I would say, on the road, but somewhere in the 70s or 80s if you're rating all the 130 football teams out there. And then you got at number 2, right? So in between number 2 and 70 or 80, certainly that's where Kentucky resides right now. And the Gamecocks want to be in that mix as well, even though I think some of these services had Carolina, 85th out of 130 or something going into the season from a power ranking standpoint of FBS programs.
Well,
so
this is the meat of the schedule, and it's not like we just discovered this. When the schedule came out, we knew. We looked at these 4 games and said, "This, if you're going to go to a bowl game, this is where it's going to happen." Because when we did our season predictions a couple weeks ago, I said that you're going to beat Vanderbilt in 4 weeks, and you're not going to win another game for the rest of the year. They're going to go winless in October or in November. So it's a brutal end of the season at A&M, at Missouri, Auburn, Clemson, Florida. Like, those are all really good teams. So to hit the win total, you obviously got to beat Troy and beat Vanderbilt. Those are the expecteds. But your swing games are Tennessee and Kentucky and at Tennessee. So yeah, this will be the measuring stick. The more I think about it, the more I'm in agreement that this will be the litmus test for the rest of the year.
Nate disagrees. He says, I had Kentucky as a loss this year, so I don't see it as a litmus test. To me, our Bluebirds, never heard that phrase before, or specific wording, are Tennessee, Auburn, and Mizzou. He sees it as those other 3 games.
It can still be a litmus test if you think you're going to lose, though. It's just how you show up. I mean, if it's a 1-possession game, then you understand that, okay, South Carolina is probably still right around the same tier as Missouri, Tennessee, and Kentucky, and this year maybe Florida, but they did look pretty good on Saturday. So it's just, if you don't get blown out, that tells you something. If you win the game, that tells you that you're closer than you thought.
803-404-6100. You can call or text. It's the early game. It's 107.5.
Be clear.
Patrick smooth on the traffic update. This poor Clemson fan. We talked about this texter on the show before. I think it's part of my healing process to text just to read them to you, so I'm not the only one that has to digest them. 6:10 this morning. Told you the defense is not that good. Georgia could score at will. You're glad they called the dogs off. 6:38. Who cares? They could have scored at will. They called the dogs off midway through the third quarter. Class, LOL. You're the guys that beat their chest about things like this, like losing to Clemson by 3 touchdowns a few years ago. 6:40. Thought y'all had a big bad defense. It's bad, all right. 6:43. They didn't play anybody the first 2 games. The defense is not that good. An hour and 1 minute later, they were dominated. They got killed. No other way to look at it. Whew.
I was thinking before the game, I hope JT Daniels starts with 2 lanes now pick, and then Stetson Bennett gets exactly 3 snaps. For the pick.
I don't know, RL. I don't catalog all those calls, man. I got to let a lot of that go in one ear and out the other.
There's too many.
Troy, as a Clemson fan, I bet, man, that's an honest takeaway there. I mean, what is up with the offense? You can't tell me that Tony Elliott just forgot how to coach. Is it just that DJ's not that good a quarterback? I thought the receivers were supposed to be as good as they've ever had. In no way you're telling me that Shipley is that much of a downgrade. What do you think, Patrick? What's your analysis there?
Something's going on with their development or recruiting of the offensive line for sure. I don't know what it is. Clemson just pumps out pros at every position except the offensive line. And I don't know whose fault that is.
Good morning, Beverly.
It is the strangest thing. I mean, Clemson just has monsters on the defensive line every single year and just can't get that O-line figured out. I don't know who is their offensive line coach and how long has he been there? That would be
I think it's Robbie Caldwell, the former Vandy head coach for a year. And
he's been there for a while?
Yeah, and really well thought of. But you're right about the pro development for sure.
There's nothing to speak of.
And yeah, if you had to pick one position group that Clemson hasn't been absolute elite in the last several years, that's it. It's not even close, right?
Nope. All right. About a minute.
Patrick, we got a caller here or no?
No.
No.
You're up.
Hello, Monday. How you feeling on a Monday morning after a weekend that sees the Gamecocks lose their first game of the season, 40-13, the final score against Georgia. Kentucky opens as a 5-point favorite this weekend at Williams-Brice. J.C. Horn, first NFL interception, and the Panthers go to 2-0. I believe, Patrick, the stat is the Panthers have been 2-0 7 times in their franchise history. You want to guess how many times they've gone to the playoffs in those 7 years they started 2-0?
Is it 7?
6.
Oh, close.
Pretty good odds and a pretty good start for the Carolina Panthers in the NFL. I thought it was a pretty good start for Luke Doty in 2021. His numbers, 13 out of 26, 153 yards, a touchdown, an interception. Was it Hot Sauce Ross? Thank goodness the Gamecocks are throwing the ball down the field. You're looking for a positive takeaway. I think that's the main one for South Carolina in the loss. We've got plenty more to discuss. Hour number 3 on the way here on 107.5 The Game. Really? No, I mean, that's where I'm confused. I get it. He's a good player, but when Dabo Swinney's talking about take a picture of this wide receiver group, might be the best ever, didn't see any kind of drop off coming.
There's Cornell Powell, too.
Chris, which one? Who won this weekend for you? Is he a Cowboys guy?
Cowboys? I think he's a Cowboys fan.
Cowboys guy. The Cowboys win?
Yep.
Who'd they beat?
56-yard field goal at the last second against the Chargers.
Zerline stuck it. I saw it.
Yep.
That's the thing on a Monday morning. A lot of times I'm like, wait a second.
It looked like the Cowboys. It looked like McCarthy botched at the end too, letting that clock run down and not get another playoff. But yeah, Zerline saved him. Justin Herbert threw 2 picks, but the kid's a stud. Justin Herbert's just going to be really freaking good for a long time. There probably aren't 5 quarterbacks I'd rather build my team around. There probably aren't 3 quarterbacks I'd rather build my team around right now.
Whoa. Come on, who else you got in there? I got off the top.
Mahomes and Josh Allen.
Wait a second. Who else? I got
Mahomes and Josh Allen.
That's it. Not Lamar Jackson. Not Deshaun Watson.
No, definitely not Deshaun Watson right now.
Well, just the off the field thing.
Yeah,
I'm talking about
Lamar,
on the.
No,
field.
I think I'd rather build around if you're signing them to the Mahomes contract. If you're giving the Mahomes contract, 12-year extension, up to $500 million. They're your quarterback for over a decade. Be Mahomes, Josh Allen, Justin Herbert.
Before the issues, you would put Deshaun Watson in there too, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't do Lamar though, because I can't be confident that he's always going to be healthy, and you have to have a good offensive coordinator.
Yeah, I have seen the video that's going around on social media. Pretty funny. I mean, how about the camera guy? I'm not assuming that's a camera guy following him. Maybe they had it on the old rope, right? Maybe that's how they were doing it with Dab speed. What's that?
Or riding a gator on the back.
No, I don't think they have that. I don't think they have enough room down the hill with everybody on there, man. Yeah, that would be a brutal look, right, for the fans in the stands. Gator leads the Clemson down the hill and have a. I mean, against him at this point, Alan. Good luck. Greg, come on now. Now you're just pandering to Patrick.
Me too.
Or you're taking shots. Which one are you doing?
It's an interesting spelling. Pretty close. I think you just forgot the C. It's a very hard name to spell. Yeah, I would think Tampa has looked the best through 2 games, but it's going to be tough this year. There's a lot of good games right now. The Browns went toe-to-toe with the Chiefs. The Ravens beat the Chiefs. I think home field advantage is going to be very important this year.
I may or may not be writing an email right now that is about you, sir.
Oh, we didn't even talk about the PLL championship.
The what?
The PLL championship yesterday.
Is that soccer?
No, the Premier Lacrosse League.
Even worse.
Chaos are your new champions. Sonny, I didn't even watch the Raiders game. Did Brian score a touchdown and then get called back again? I started him in fantasy and was very disappointed with my 7 points. He got robbed for a touchdown 2 weeks in a row. That's tough.
All right. Interesting. Bill out this morning under the weather, expecting him back tomorrow. Tim Hill, Patrick Perrette with you. Patrick filling in for Jen Jensen, producing in the Herndon Chevrolet Studios in downtown Columbia. Patrick, I did not think, especially after a 40-13 loss to Georgia in week number 3, that we would come in the Monday after 3 weeks of the college football season and get a couple of people kind of going in the same direction to start our number 3 this direction. Sonny, YouTube Live. My prediction is by the end of the year, based on Clemson's current performance, we might actually have a chance to win this year. So I'm going to call it. Gamecocks get the win over Clemson. Mark, a Clemson grad, says Clemson loses to NC State this weekend. It's going to be a Kelly Bryant year. Did Kelly Bryant get him to the college football playoff?
Yeah. They lost. They still wouldn't have gone to the playoff.
Troy says, Sonny, if Clemson plays like they did Saturday, anybody can beat them. Troy says the worst feeling he's ever had after a win. Clemson surviving against Georgia Tech, 14-8 after the weird lightning delay right before the half, where they had to come out an hour and 53 minutes later, I think it was, and finish the last few seconds of the second quarter and then go right into the third quarter. Dabo Swinney saying he's never been a part of anything like that. But I don't think he's been a part of anything like what we've seen through 3 games here. You lose 10-3 to Georgia, no hurt there. And I thought all the talk, the national shows just make me shake my head. The national sports talk shows, where clearly most of these guys aren't tuned into college football and they just kind of use it for whatever sensationalistic conversation they can have to think it'll get people fired up. So because of that, knowing that that's kind of the apparatus they use it for, the whatever you want to say, the way that they use it, I try to stay away from even paying it any attention. But the fact that it was on a Monday after the Clemson-Georgia game, where the only touchdown scored in the game was a pick six, and Clemson's defense was outstanding. The whole thing that people are saying is this the beginning of the end for Clemson and the whole thing? I thought it was so ridiculous. But now, after Georgia Tech comes into Death Valley, and it's 14-8, and Georgia Tech's got a chance at the end there, well, it's a different conversation. I know there have been examples in years past of similar type games. What was it? Pitt one year, Syracuse a couple of years. So maybe that's just it. But Patrick, because we haven't seen it, offense get going. I mean, you score 49 points against SC State. That kind of is what it is. But this Clemson offense just seems to have serious problems. We've talked about it, I think, on the live stream this morning during the breaks about the offensive line being the main issue there. To me, you throw in quarterback play as well. I think quarterback play has been so elite the last several years that it's when you have an elite quarterback, you can cover up a lot of mistakes, man. And Clemson just hasn't shown that. DJU has not shown that to me at this point. I guess the talent is there, the potential is there, the execution hasn't been there. The Clemson defense still, I think, as good as it's been. I mean, they're the only team in the country right now, I think, to not have given up a touchdown. But there are some serious concerns right now with Clemson football for sure. And I get where Sonny's coming from. Who would agree? Now, the Gamecocks are going to have to get a lot better. And this morning, through 2 hours, we talked about a lot of the issues that happened over the weekend. Procedural penalties, unsportsmanlike conduct penalties continuing. The lack of discipline, really, I guess, is that main one issue for the Gamecocks. When you're going up against the number 2 team in the country at their place on a Saturday night, you can't have that. Maybe more concerning than that, physically getting dominated at the line of scrimmage. And Patrick, it's not just the offensive line that has been talked about the most this morning. And again, to me, that was kind of a given going in. That I mean, when you see an offensive line struggle against East Carolina, you think they're going to play better against Georgia? Good luck with that. We didn't see that on Saturday night. We saw Georgia dominate the line of scrimmage. It was on the other side of the ball. I think that was a larger concern. I know Shane Beamer after the game said he was relatively pleased limiting Georgia's running game to 184 yards. To me, Georgia's run game this year isn't what it's been in years past. Zamir White's a good back. James Cook, good backs. But to me, they're not some of the best backs in the country like they typically have, or at least the combination of them and the Georgia offensive line hasn't shown me that they're one of the best rushing attacks in the country. They look like they could pretty much do whatever they wanted to on Saturday night. They run for 184, throw for 307. So it wasn't just outlandish, but to me, the more important numbers were what happened in the first half when the game was still in doubt. And I think it was like 334 yards, total yards in the first half for Georgia. That's the more alarming number that pops out to me, Patrick. And I think it's the more legitimate number where Georgia was going full speed and 100%. And they clearly kind of eased off the gas when they had the game well in hand in the second half. So I think there's some legit concerns, certainly on the offensive line for Carolina right now, but I think on the defensive line as well, where we've heard about all the talent and the improvement and a strength of the team, but weren't able to control the line of scrimmage, get anywhere close to controlling the line of scrimmage against a Georgia offensive line that had a lot of question marks going in. How do you diagnose what you saw on Saturday night, the 40-13 win by Georgia?
Well, I would agree with almost all of that, and that's why this weekend, I mean, it can be very concerning, because what has Kentucky's strength been? For the most part of the Mark Stoops era, they've had a really good offensive line. They've been a run-based team. They've always had a running quarterback, and they've had monsters on the offensive line. They still do. Darian Kennard, their tackle, is going to be probably a first-round pick, if not a second-round pick. He's a beast. So Enagbare is going to have his work cut out for him again. And the deep shots were a concern. Jermaine Burton was getting open deep a lot against South Carolina. And if you've watched any of Wan'Dale Robinson, the transfer at Kentucky, he's going to be able to do the same thing, especially if Cam Smith's not there. So there will be concern. You're going to have to stop the run against Kentucky. They've got a running quarterback, as they always do, but this one can actually beat you deep as well. So it's going to be a concern. And it was a little concerning how the big plays were hitting for Georgia, especially since they weren't all that healthy. One of the big reasons I was super high on Georgia this year is I just felt like with their tight ends, Darnell Washington, and I thought it was going to be Eric Gilbert, but now it's Brock Bowers. That kid's a beast of a freshman. They were just going to be able to dink and dunk it and make you sink guys in to cover the tight ends underneath, and that's when they'll take their shots and hit you deep. And they didn't even really need the threat of Darnell Washington or Zach Pickens being the possession guy, or George Pickens being the possession guy. They were just able to get open. So it will be a concern, and that's the problem. I think Kentucky's DNA is a lot like Georgia's. They're just, I guess, a knockoff version of Georgia, but they're still a good team. So you will have – that's kind of why I think this is a litmus test. You're going to play them the same way that you played Georgia, the same style, the same game plan, and all that stuff. But will it work out against a less talented team that's still probably more talented than you? We shall see.
803-404-6100. Again, Kentucky, a 5-point favorite. That's the line. The biggest line opened up last night, even on the road to Williams-Brice Stadium. I felt like that was pretty fair from what we've seen so far. And it was Trey who hit us up in the last hour saying, this is the litmus test for me, the Kentucky game. I think a lot of years, that's how Carolina fans have seen the SEC East, right? Go in, maybe don't expect to beat Georgia, Florida, Tennessee back in the day, but you certainly expect to beat Kentucky. You expect to beat Vanderbilt. You expect to, compete for sure now with a Kentucky team that has usurped you there in the division, right? Carolina has been passed by Kentucky right now. There's no doubt about it. I mean, the Vegas spread is clear evidence to that. The records in the last several years in this series, clearly evidence of that. This is where Shane Beamer can really pump a ton of energy and optimism into this program, Patrick. Wouldn't you agree? If you can pull out a win this weekend, especially after, let me go back to the poll results, because this is one of the reasons I put out the poll today. How do you feel after this loss? Because it is very easy, I think, to get distracted by just a few or a handful or the vocal minority. So that's why I like to put out the poll question today, just to get a better handle on numbers. Obviously, it's unscientific, but we got 185 votes in this morning on Twitter at TimHill1075. If you would like to go vote, how do you feel about that Gamecocks after that loss to Georgia? And 57% of the vote right now, same as I felt going in. Another 31% of the vote, so 88%, either feeling the same or that 31% is encouraged and fought hard. That's a large majority, 88% of the people. Only 7% of you are saying, I don't know how to feel, and then 4% of you are going with discouraged and dominated. So I feel like it's really easy to pay attention to some of the loudest voices a lot of times in that very small minority at 4% down there. And I think that's rational and logical, or at least I think that is a sign of a lot of good fans out there who choose to see the positives of what happened over the weekend. For instance, on the Cool Care Heating and Air text line, Darren says, I'm surprised at how much Doty has affected our offense. It's just one game, but I'm excited to see our offense moving forward. And our defense has amazing potential. I don't think this loss has ruined the honeymoon phase just yet. A lot of you checking out the video example of something I've never seen before in my life, and I've retweeted this thing. It comes from my old TV station, ABC Columbia. Cam Gaskins was there in Athens with a camera on Saturday night, and after Darius Rush got beat for a touchdown, he's standing with his hands on his hips. The camera is on Rush from behind as one player comes over and taps him on the head. I believe that's Mo Kaba, just to say, keep your head up. And then from behind, it's Jalen Foster, who comes up from behind, puts his hands on Rush's hands and pulls them down from his hips to fix the body language. Never seen it before in my life. A lot of you kind of with Cam Gaskins and his take on there on Twitter there about haven't seen that before, or just an example of how this program right now is different than it has been in the past. You can overstate that a little bit. But it's fascinating physical manifestation of a lot of the talk we've heard about. Now it's going to be a matter of, well, you keep doing that every single game, that's not going to be good enough, right? Having good body language after you get beat for touchdowns is not what Shane Beamer and Gamecock football fans want at all. What you want to see is the culture change, inspire better play, more wins, the whole thing. Certainly a more competitive spirit, and that is why this Kentucky game, I think, is wildly interesting coming up. And that's why your takes coming out of the Georgia game, I think, are interesting as well, because Georgia dominated the football game. I don't think there's any other way to put it. They were supposed to dominate the football game, going in 30-point favorites. South Carolina fans don't want to be in that position where Georgia dominates you every year. After the game, the frustration apparent from Shane Beamer when asked about why was the Georgia defensive line so effective? 5 stars everywhere. The defense got 5-star players in the secondary as well. They're just really, really good. So the goal is for South Carolina to be there one day, like they were when I sat in the interview room at Williams-Brice Stadium with Mark Richt after that 2010 game, where Marcus Lattimore really burst on the scene in the SEC. I think it was his first SEC game, running for near 200 yards. Always quotes it exactly what he ran for that day. But Mark Richt is talking about how South Carolina has monsters on the outside, and he thinks Lattimore is going to be one of the best to ever do it by the time he leaves there. So that the rivalry has really shifted clearly from the time that Shane Beamer was last an assistant coach at South Carolina. It's his job to get it back to that point. The Gamecocks, there's a lot of work to be done. Starts this week against Kentucky, who comes in favored by 5. SEC Nation also coming in, the SEC Network's version of College Game Day. Several of you have pointed that out this morning. So a good atmosphere for sure at Gamecock Park for tailgating, pregame festivities. I think there's a boat fishing show thing going on over there as well. So there's going to be all kinds of stuff going on. 7 o'clock kickoff at Williams-Brice, late September, hoping for good weather. It should be a lot of fun. And then for anybody who's in that vocal minority, Patrick, I was talking about the disappointed, discouraged crowd. Gamecocks are 2-1 going into the Kentucky game. I think if you had them being more than that, I think you're being awfully unrealistic. So the chance to go 3-1 with a win over a team who's only favored by 5 against you, who didn't look that great over the weekend, is certainly a possibility. You can pull things out of that Georgia game that makes it more of a possibility. Let's start with what effect did you think Luke Doty had on the game Saturday night? And we always do an evaluation scale, or we have for the first 2 weeks for Zeb Noland. I think we gave him basically about a 7 in game 1, about a 5 in game number 2. You give Luke Doty 1 through 10 in that Georgia game.
That is tough because, he was 50% completion and 47% quarterback rating. So on the surface, that's not great. But you have to grade this with a curve against that team. So I would say he's right around where Zeb was against East Carolina. There was some good, there was some bad. I would probably give him like a 6.5 because the one thing is just he added an infusion of energy, and he stopped some bad plays from being worse plays. He turned potential, 15-yard losses to no loss, or throwing the ball away, breaking the pocket, escaping, and being able to throw it away. It's just a different element that we need. It didn't really translate to the run game because that Georgia defense is so good to begin with. But I mean, I think if you said before the game, would you take 82 yards? South Carolina fans would say, yeah, I would love 82 yards against Georgia, especially when you saw Clemson get 2. So it's just a different element. He added some energy, some excitement, and you think when the pocket collapses, the play's not over. So that is the one thing that I think is really important for the South Carolina team. When the offensive line is not good this year, teams are going to get pressure. You got to have a quarterback that can make something happen. And more importantly, I think he didn't break the pocket and just chuck balls up, or he wasn't dumb. He wasn't making dumb plays where he's just freaking out and he's like, oh, I got to get rid of it right now, and throwing it right into the arms of a Georgia defender. That you didn't see that. So I think that's a little bit of maturity, maybe a little bit of confidence, and just having played against this team already.
I give him a 7. About what I gave Zeb Nolan in game number 1. And again, graded on a curve. Nolan threw 4 touchdown passes in that ball game, but he didn't get Illinois. So that kind of curved down. This one curves way up because of the Georgia defense and all the problems they present. And like you said, Patrick, nothing dumb, nothing that was going to beat you. And when you're talking about breaking the pocket and throwing the ball, to me, he looked like a much more polished quarterback than the last version I saw, when I saw him pretty much just get the ball from Mike Bobo and say, hey, man, go make some plays. We need you back there because our other guy's getting no time and he doesn't have a chance. So you do what you can. And he did what he could, but it wasn't pretty, and it was a lot of running. I didn't see that on Saturday night. I saw a quarterback as opposed to an athlete playing quarterback. It wasn't great. It wasn't outstanding. Was it clearly good enough to even compete and have a chance to win the game? But to me, it was better than what I've seen in the past, and I think it gives Gamecock fans a lot of reason for optimism. RL on the YouTube live stream, solid take here. He says, people will say I am, quote, happy with the loss, unquote. Nope. I expected the issues and talent disparity. I am just not going to go groan and complain about it. Interesting take there from RL. Hope signed off on that. So, if Hope signs off on a take, it's always a good one. Speaking of that, love to have you subscribe to the YouTube page on the video live stream. Up and those numbers up and rolling. And wow, DC up over in El Paso, Texas, tuning in this morning, even though he's 2 hours behind. Impressive stuff, DC. If you can beat El Paso, let us know this morning. 803-404-6100, where you can text or call us at. And also watch us on that YouTube, Facebook Live, Twitter as well. The station handle is at 1075 The Game. You can vote on that poll question again at Tim Hill 1075. Just getting rolling in hour number 3. It's the early game here on 1075 The Game. Timing, an interesting place to be after 3 games in the college football season. Also, man, a really interesting place to be right now in the housing market for sure. Buford Lending would love to help you out. If you are interested in seeing exactly what you can get, seeing your options, I totally recommend Buford Lending. Benji Getzy and his 25 years of experience, they've proven to me that they're a lender I can trust because they've been there for me in this lending process personally. They've been there, come through with exactly what I've needed them to come through with, when I needed them to come through with it. And the numbers they've shown me, tremendous moving forward, and numbers I didn't even imagine were possible. No matter what your situation is, VA loan, FHA loan, USDA, conventional construction, renovation, maybe you're looking to refinance, Benji Getzy and his team at Buford Lending, all they ask for is you to give them a call at 843-524-2404. Put them in the mix. Even if you have relationships with other lenders out there, just give Buford Lending a chance to prove that they can find the best deal out there for you. Benji Getzy and his team confident that that's exactly what they can do when you give them a call. It's Buford Lending, 843-524-2404. Yeah, it was creepy how much they showed Arch Manning, but when it's an uncompetitive game, man, you guys got to understand the TV element of it, right? They're doing the game on ESPN for the national audience, not for the Georgia audience and not for the South Carolina audience. You got those audiences. You don't have to keep them. You got to keep the casual fan. And the only way to do that was Arch Manning. How do we end up in our picks, Patrick? You got those things still written down?
I have the lines. Do you know what you picked?
Yep, I remember. I got Alabama wrong. I got Clemson wrong. I got Carolina wrong. So I think I got the other two. I think I got Penn State and Ole Miss. Is that who we picked? Those five?
Yeah. And then, so I got Penn State wrong. I got Alabama wrong. And I got Ole Miss wrong. So I think we both went 2 and 5, but we meant 2 and 3.
Yeah. Sounds right. So you're 6 out of 15, and I'm 8 out of 15.
Yeah. We went the opposite way on Penn State and Carolina, and everything else was the same.
Right. Well, unless you picked Tulane to cover.
I picked Tulane, yeah. So
did you pick Georgia Tech to cover?
I think so. I don't know.
So you didn't write it down?
No, I wrote down the numbers. I didn't write down the picks.
Gotcha. Let's just say
we had that at 28 and a half. Also, we have Barron on hold, and Jim, I think, is the guy with the radio voice.
Okay. You think his name is Jim? You don't know?
No, I know his name is Jim. I think he's the same guy with that radio voice who was on a police chase last time.
Gotcha. Barron first.
All right. Jim dropped, but we have 2 Georgia fans now, Barron and Richard. And Richard is going to bring up the taunting, Josh Van taunting call.
Okay.
Barron, who knows where he's going to go?
The Beast. That's where I'm going to start him. What happened to your Beast, Barron?
You know what? Respect to Richard to Barron for calling in after his boy was exposed.
But Chad, that's going to be every offensive line.
Yeah.
Even in the NFL.
Unless
Yeah, he's a freak.
the only guy that's going to match up to him is going to be Evan Neal from Alabama if Jordan Davis lines up on the outside. Like Evan Neal is 6'7", 360. Okay, Barron also dropped. Barron called 3 times during that segment, and when I got him during the break, all the time he just drops.
He's got a lot going on this morning.
He's retired.
I mean, just get out. I'm guessing that's news from Craig.
That's what?
Fake news from Craig there.
No, I just looked it up. He was a 3-star.
Wow.
From Ballard Creek in Charlotte.
So Richard's still there, correct?
Yeah, that's all we got. You're up.
Loving all the takes on the Cool Care Heating and Air text line. I shouldn't say loving all the takes, but loving all the interaction. That's what I should say. Like Jim in Goose Creek says, y'all think Doty will start? What do you think, Patrick? I think that's pretty obvious.
For sure, yeah. Start every game for the rest of the year.
And how about the take there? Now, to update you on the injuries, Gerard Green likely out for the season. I know Shane Beamer mentioning last night broken bone in his ankle and could possibly come back in November. But to me, that's likely out for the season at this point. Cam Smith, Shane Beamer hopeful will get back. He missed the second half, had his foot stepped on, the same foot that was in a boot for a large part of preseason practice. Hearing that, hopeful he'll be back and at 100%, hearing that for him, and hopeful that Zeb Nolan will be back this weekend and available. And to hear him admit there was no feeling in the hand on Saturday, I guess he told ESPN sideline reporter Molly McGrath, she made the report that he could still be available in emergency situations. Like, who is unavailable then? If a quarterback who can't feel his hand is available in emergency situations, I guess maybe to hand off. Taking these things with a grain of salt, as I do with every head coach, but it's interesting to continue to hear how Shane Beamer puts the injury probabilities for a lot of his guys moving forward. Yeah, just hate it for Sherrod Green. That was a bummer way to start that game against Georgia for sure. Seeing him kind of writhing in pain and the cart come out and players rally around him and everything, knowing that his season is likely done. The Cam Smith injury, I think, is one to keep your eye on for sure. Several of you have commented on him specifically and struggling in coverage, and certainly Georgia made a few plays on him, but he's their best defensive back, no matter what happened in that game, and has been, and Carolina needs him to have a successful season, which will also include, if not a win Saturday night against Kentucky, at least a good performance and showing progress and bouncing back from being relatively uncompetitive. And even as I say that, I probably shouldn't put it that way. Georgia dominated the ball game, but South Carolina was competitive early on. To me, I mentioned it earlier, Patrick, the difference in this game was the end of the first half, how Georgia took advantage of Shane Beamer deciding to call a timeout, force a punt. They downed it at the 1, got the safety, then ended up kicking a field goal in the final seconds. Gamecocks kicked it off and just showed me the difference between these two teams. What about you? What was if you had to pick one instance or one particular aspect of this game to tell a story, where would you go?
One particular instance, I don't know that there's one play that kind of summarizes it. I don't know. Maybe I don't want to say that it was South Carolina shooting themselves in the foot again, but I mean, Josh Vann making one big play and then immediately getting a taunting call, and you having to back it up. You're about to be at midfield, getting close to field goal range, hoping to get some points out of this drive, and all of a sudden you're 15 yards back in your own territory, and you obviously end up getting nothing there. It's just, you had to be perfect in that game if you wanted any chance to beat Georgia or to stay competitive really in that game, and it didn't happen. The one Jermaine Burton touchdown, I think the first touchdown of the game, where South Carolina is not lined up or late to get lined up, and of course, just you screw up for 1 second, one little mental error, and a team that talented is going to beat you for 6 immediately, and that's of course how it happened. Whereas when South Carolina got the snap off, or Georgia could get lined up, they hit a deep ball down the sideline, and it was probably their biggest play of the game, but you can't score on it. You needed to capitalize on everything, and you were unable to do it. So other than that, it's just Nakobe Dean hitting your quarterback repeatedly was what stood out.
Anonymous Raj says, take the taunting away, and we finally have a wide receiver number 1. Yeah, Josh Vann has been wildly productive. And to me, I'll put him in the Shi Smith territory of last year, stepping up when the track record wasn't necessarily there to be the number 1 receiver. After the game, I believe it's WLTX cameras that caught the interaction between Vann and Will Muschamp. And Muschamp asked him, hey, man, why are you doing this now? Or something to that effect. And Vann was like, hey, they're just finally giving me the ball. And Muschamp was like, oh, don't tell me that. So there's not a big-time explanation for this, even from Vann himself there. I know you weren't going to get a detailed, well-thought-out conversation between those guys on the field in that environment, but 3 catches, 128 yards. Whew, strong game for sure. And Josh Vann exactly what the Gamecocks needed. And I think Luke Doty coming in played exactly how Carolina needed him to play to make sure this thing didn't get more out of control than it did. Don't get me wrong. Doty and the Gamecock offense has to be much better to be one of the best teams in college football like Georgia is, and it's not there. But to see a step forward, to see progress is important, and that's what I saw on Saturday. I'm not the only one. Ryan hits us up, Cool Care Heating and Air text line. I think Doty's much improved, stepped up in the pocket when he had the opportunity. His mechanics are much better when throwing the football. If the offensive line could give him any time at all, I think he would have showed even more Saturday night. It is bright with him behind center if we can get some guys to protect him. Patrick, you on board with that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely on board with that. The offensive line is just the biggest problem right now, and I don't know what you have in the pipeline. I mean, we obviously know about Brew Baker and some of those guys that are committed right now, the high schoolers, but offensive line is a position that takes a couple of years to develop. You can't just expect guys to come in as freshmen and start right away unless there's some of these freakazoid 5-stars who are 6'5", 350, or 325 and freak athletes at 18 years old. You're not going to put that on your freshman next year. So I just don't know how long that turnaround is going to take. The offensive line is not an easy thing to turn around. It's probably the hardest position in the entire sport to just turn around on a dime every single year. You can bring in a couple wide receivers and help your wide receiving group. You can bring in a running back to be your workhorse, and you can bring in defensive backs like we've seen this year. There's lots of things you can do, but you can't just bring in offensive linemen off the street or just recruit a couple freshmen and put them in right away. You can't plug and play that position. So I don't know. I don't know what the fix is going to be. I don't know if we'll see changes this year, but it's not just talent level. There were clearly communication errors, and it's probably going to be the Achilles heel of this team right now. So I hope for Doty's sake that they play better, because I think he takes this offense to a potentially different level.
And I think expecting improved play this week, especially against a Kentucky team that's pretty good. I think they're right. They're right around one of the top 25 teams in the country, right around number 25 or so. But South Carolina is supposed to compete with Kentucky. Kentucky is number 27 right now as I look at the coaches poll. And for some reason, they're way down in that AP poll after probably that's why you saw over the weekend a relatively close game with Tennessee Chattanooga, I think it was. fell out. A lot of voters falling out of favor with them, or Kentucky falling out of favor with them this weekend. But I think they're pretty good. If the Gamecocks are going to have a better than expected season, a win over Kentucky at home this weekend will certainly signal that. They're 5-point underdog, coming off of a game that didn't play particularly well on the offensive side of the ball, especially on that line. Trey says it's the litmus test for him about the 2021 season, this Kentucky game. Pierre says on Twitter at SimHill1075, where he hit me up and checked out the poll question we're asking today about how you feel about the Gamecocks after that 40-13 loss to Georgia. Can't say the Kentucky game's a defining moment or a litmus test for the season. The team can mature afterwards and might finish the season with surprise wins. It's just that, Pierre, that schedule set up like that, man. The next 4 games, if you want to tell me the next 4 games are more the litmus test, then I'm with you. And that's where I'm at right now, because you got Kentucky and Troy at home, at Tennessee, and then Vandy at home. Next 4 games are winnable. You win all 4 of them, hell of a season. Mark it down already. You win 6 games this year, that's a heck of a year for Shane Beamer with what he had coming back and the whole thing. But knowing then the 5 games after that, at Texas A&M, Florida at home, at Mizzou, Auburn at home, Clemson at home. You don't beat Kentucky in week 4, I find it hard to believe you're going to win one of those last 5 games. But Pierre is correct, Patrick. You can mature and get better throughout the season. The problem, though, is that other teams will be doing the same thing. Wesley hits us up and says he is happy with the team's effort. Coaches need the team more organized. Got to stop the penalties before and after the snap. Clayton, the biggest downer all morning long, except for maybe a couple of Clemson trolls. Maybe he's one of those as well. He says, if you're not discouraged with a 27-point loss, you're a loser. Simple. Sorry, just giggle. I'm guessing Clayton's not a Gamecock fan. Or maybe they just don't want to, or come at it from the opposite perspective or the un-South Carolina fan perspective, which maybe helps us keep things zoomed out a little bit to some degree on the program. We appreciate all of your takes weighing in this morning. Ferrari says, best case scenario, 6-1 going into Texas. If this team ever got to 6-1, that would be incredible. That led Tyson to say 4 in a row. When's the last time the Gamecocks strung 4 wins in a row together? I think we got to go back to the heyday there of the 2010 to 2013 seasons. I don't even know if they strung 4 in a row together in that 2010 SEC East Division Championship season. I'll go back and check that out for you here during the break. Dramatic conclusion of the show coming up. It's the early game on 107.5. While my nose is running, let's see if I got it. So we won't let you don't have to hear me blow my nose. So actually, let's see, when Carolina in year 2 of Muschamp, they went, 8-5? 9. They went 9-4 that year. They might have went 4 in a row. Let's check it out. That's 17, right? It is. Started the season with 2 wins. Had 3 wins in a row in the middle of the year. Arkansas, Tennessee, and Vandy. Then 2 more wins in 1 more year. So nope. 6-5, 14. It's the only place we got to go to next. I think that anyway they did that 6 and 6 actually. They have 4 in a row. Nope, 3 in a row there. East Carolina, Georgia, Vandy. Okay. So I think it will be 2013, 4 in a row. Lost Patrick apparently in that spot. See if you say in 2012. Surely in 2013, if you go 11 and 2, don't you have to win 4 in a row? Yeah, won 4 in a row. Vandy, UCF, Kentucky, and Arkansas. And then won 4 in a row, 5 in a row, 6 in a row to end the season. Mizzou, Mississippi State, Florida, Coastal, Clemson, and Wisconsin. So the end of the 2013 season is the answer. And I want to see the 2010 season if they won 4 in a row that year. They finished just 9 and 5, so they probably did. Started with 3 in a row. No. 3 in a row again in the middle. Never won 4 in a row that year. And that was a walk down memory lane. Let's see, Craig and Jim, who are you guys talking about there? Everything all right over there?
Yeah, just internet. We're back. You're up.
Mark, YouTube live stream. I'm excited. Doty hit a few passes downfield. Hopefully, with a full week of practice, he'll be more on point. It's a good point there, Mark. Again, this will all be part of the process, and I get that head coaches have to play some things close to the best for gamesmanship and teams that will preparing against them. But we finally got the full story, it sounds like, on Saturday, and I think it came from the ESPN crew when Luke Doty came in the game, maybe at that point. I don't know if it happened. It might happen before the game when they were talking about Zeb Nolan starting, where Shane Beamer revealed that Thursday was really the first time that Luke Doty practiced fully. 11 on 11, really no real restrictions. And we had heard from him and his coach's show, Carolina Calls, that night, that no soreness. And I mentioned on Friday morning, Patrick, that was the first time we heard something kind of markedly different from Shane Beamer and gave me a reason to think that Luke Doty might play in the ball game. Looked like if Zeb Nolan would have remained healthy, that Doty probably wasn't going in because he had only really practiced in that Thursday game. Now, he had been out at practice and doing individual stuff, a little 7-on-7. I think Shane let us know after the ball game on Saturday, but really the only first full reps he got, 11 on 11 first team reps, was on Thursday. And I think the coaching staff just felt like it wasn't fair. He wasn't quite ready to play against Georgia, to go start against Georgia, I should say. But obviously when Nolan gets his hand stepped on and can't feel his hand because of the cut and the whole deal, he goes out. I thought that was another interesting moment, manifestation of culture and what Shane Beamer and this 2021 version of the Gamecock football team is. When Nolan came out of the locker room, back onto the sidelines, he immediately went right to the huddle. I think it was during a timeout, and had some words of encouragement for Luke Doty. The other visual evidence, and the way I saw the extended version of that from Cam Gaskins, the ABC Columbia camera that was there in Athens over the weekend, and the one that has really gotten play on social media from Cam is a shot of Darius Rush after giving up a touchdown. and it's Jalen Foster who comes up from behind him and physically knocks his hands off his hips, something I'd never seen in football, and was an example of how body language is important, and you can tell that has been preached to the team. And I feel like in years past, Patrick, if that had happened, there might have been a fight between South Carolina players. Someone might have taken not so well to that and gone after his own teammate and said, "What are you doing? Get off me," the whole thing. Am I going too far on that one? I know you think,
I think so.
I know you think the storyline there is being overhyped and the culture change and the whole thing. Is there anything that you can see? Like, to me, that is a physical example of something I've never seen before happening on the field. Not necessarily in a positive way for the Gamecocks as it results in a play or getting you closer to win a game, but it's an example of something that happened. I saw it. Never seen it before. Interested to see how it continues to develop in the Shane Beamer era. What are you going to have to see to actually buy into? And I will concede for sure that it is an overhyped kind of storyline and something that's easy for those of us talking about the team to kind of to get into and fans to kind of latch onto from a positive standpoint. But what are you going to have to see then to start to believe that Shane Beamer and this team, their dynamic is different in a positive way?
Well, I think we've already seen that just by the vibe of the offseason, but we can't just start attributing every good story to look at this culture change. Like, it's not like the Will Muschamp South Carolina teams, whenever they were losing a game, they just gave up. I mean, the Georgia game last year, it was game 10, no reason to want to show up. Half the team opted out or was hurt. They went in there with a completely depleted roster. I think that was that might have been the Jalen Foster coming out party. I think he led the team in tackles that game, and that was the whole story. Was this Georgia team that's playing this broken version of a South Carolina team with all their backups basically fought their butts off for 60 minutes. They were completely overmatched, but all they did was play hard, and we were really proud of that performance, and we talked about it on the show. So to now come back and say, man, look at these players picking each other up and fighting till the end. This is an example of a culture change. This would have never happened against Muschamp. I just think it's way over the top, and it's completely revisionist history. Like, I do think there is a culture change. I'm proud of the effort. I like seeing that. I've never seen someone drop another guy's hands off his hips. But to pretend like this is an example of something we've never seen before, guys picking each other up when they're down and fighting hard for 60 minutes, it's just not true.
York asks, it's a good question, I think. Did we say the same things when Will Muschamp took over for Steve Spurrier? I think we talked more about maybe the philosophy change from a practice standpoint. How Steve Spurrier towards the end might have allowed practice to get a little bit more lax than he should have, as opposed to Muschamp, who harped on the practice and the whole thing. But culture was never a word that I heard Will Muschamp use. It was never a conversation, I don't think, around the Gamecock program. Now, when Lou Holtz took over for Brad Scott, Patrick, you want to talk about a culture change discussion. That I felt like that was Lou Holtz's political platform to take the job. And it was all about changing the culture of South Carolina football. But at that time, it made a lot more sense with just one bowl win in its history and very little success to go on compared to the national championship coach who comes in. That made some sense. And it did change to a degree. And then Lou Holtz lost a little bit of control of it, kind of like Steve Spurrier did towards the end as well. Will Muschamp and Steve Spurrier, neither one of those guys, real culture guys, or at least talking about it. And I think they were more about results for sure. The Shane Beamer era, a little bit different. And it starts the SEC anyway with a 40-13 loss to Georgia. Appreciate all your takes on that this morning. Hitting us up all over the place on that live video stream sponsored by Buford Lending, on the Cool Care Heating and Air text line, the Love Chevy phone lines. Final poll question results this morning at Tim Hill 107.5. How do you feel after that Georgia game? Most of you going with, same as I felt going in, more than half the votes. In second place, more than 33% of the votes. Encouraged, fought hard. Very few of you going in third place, I don't know how to feel. And in fourth place, discouraged and dominated. Positive show this morning, Patrick. Nice job.
Thank you. Let's do it again tomorrow. Talk
Dan
about
Patrick. And maybe with Bill back. Dan Patrick Show coming up next. Need to get that 4-game win streak in 2013 on the air, but that'll teach him to listen to the video stream or watch the video stream like you smart people this morning.
8 years.
Thank you, Anthony. Call, Mark. Patrick, any final words to the great video streamers this morning?
Great work, everybody. Just go and subscribe. That's all I got.
What if they're already subscribed?
Just keep doing you. Interact more. Comment. You guys are what makes the live stream great.
Amen. Making the live stream great again is what we're doing here on the show. Kind of doing it for the first time. See you guys tomorrow.